Hello, everybody. Welcome to a very special episode of The Rewind. We've had this in the works for a while. Marty is away. Marty has taken a trip to Japan, and so normally during an episode of The Rewind, Darren and I will eventually, inevitably, start talking about Star Trek, and Marty will zone out. He will check out of existence because he does not care about Star Trek. So while he is away in Japan, Darren and I are taking the opportunity to talk about Star Trek, that I have not seen, a much beloved Star Trek Deep Space Nine.
Hopefully
Darren.
it's not a Flash in Japan episode.
Wow. That's beautiful.
Yeah. Dad is away. It does feel like Dad is away.
It does. I can't tell you how long we're going to go because I think last time it was just Darren and I. We went close to 3 hours.
Which is odd because you imagine you remove 1/3 of like the podcasting dynamic. It'll get shorter, but no,
not here. Marty does a really good job of kind of taming us, which I think is wonderful. Okay, Darren. I guess I'm going to start here. I watched a lot of Star Trek: The Next Generation. After I fell in love with Star Trek: The Next Generation, I went back, rewatched the old, the original series movies. I, of course, watched the Next Gen movies, most of which I did not care for. But the Star Trek Next Generation series for me was always, very important. It was an activity that I really enjoyed doing, just catching a stray episode here or there. Later, watching the entire series when it got its fantastic Blu-ray release, it was really, really wonderful. But Deep Space Nine never sat right with me, so I never watched it. What's your history with Star Trek?
This is something I inherited from my grandparents, which is so much of like my media history is like how much of it got handed down by my grandparents. When I was younger, my family lived in Ghana in West Africa for a while, and so my parents would like come home for like summers or Christmas. They'd do like a month, and when they were home, they'd immediately want to visit their like friends and people they knew in Ireland. So I would be left as the older child with my brother Kieran, sitting down with the grandparents, spending quality time because who wants to be dragged around Ireland visiting your friends' relatives on farms? So, or visiting your parents, like friends and relatives on farms. So, obviously, like I've talked before, a lot of my love of schlocky horror movies comes from my granddad. Like my granddad was the guy who taught me about like John Carpenter and Wes Craven,
Yeah.
and like let me see The Shining at the age of 8, which is just great grandbearing and great babysitting. Like I would
Beautiful.
wholeheartedly recommend that. I don't think my mother ever forgave him for that. And then my gran, she was very much a TV watcher. The joke is that like we got like Sky Plus, which is TiVo basically in Ireland in 2006, which is one of those great. You can chart like how far behind Ireland is America, just by it being 2006 when TiVo arrived. Like Gran figured out in the course of like 3 hours that she could use this to watch infinite CSI. So I would watch like lots of CSI, lots of NCIS, lots of Law and Order with her, but also Star Trek: The Next Generation was a big thing, and it was a big bonding thing for the two of us. And like I can remember, because I remember being home in Ireland for like the 7th season of Star Trek: Next Generation, and I remember specifically a Gambit, which is like a 2-part episode. I remember that airing on Sky One the week before we flew back to Ghana, and having to wait like 5 years before I saw the second half of that 2-part episode because. And it's amazing how much of that like you retain and how much of it is yours. So that's how I came to Star Trek, and that's how I came to Star Trek in general. And I think like what's really cool about Deep Space Nine is Deep Space Nine obviously comes out during the 5th season of The Next Generation. Comes out with The Next Generation is one of the biggest shows on television. It's a massive success. Everybody loves it. We should spin off. We should franchise. We should capitalize on this. And Deep Space Nine immediately kind of bumps up against the reaction of it's not Star Trek. These guys like. It's to boldly go, not to boldly sit. And there is a certain kind of reaction among hardcore Star Trek fans of like, no, this is not my Star Trek. I want like The Next Generation. I want them on a ship and I want them voyaging. I want them going in a direction. Perhaps if there were some sort of like Voyager type situation, that would be what I would be more interested in.
Yes, that sounds like it would work. Absolutely.
Well, yes, the creation of Voyager is very clearly, we tried something different with Deep Space Nine. Can we just put him on a ship and point him in a direction and that'll be enough? But like, yeah, Star Trek Deep Space Nine was not my grand Star Trek. She
Mhm.
never really watched it. It was kind of a little bit too modern, a little bit too aggressive, a little bit too
Sure.
confrontational. It was very different in style than The Next Generation. And so I, at the time, would have been, I'm guessing, about like 10 or 11 or 12. So like Star Trek Deep Space Nine was like mine. And it was like that thing that a lot of people have when you come into culture where you have something that's given to you from a relative or from a friend or from somebody you know, and that's fantastic because that's shared. You will always have that with them. Like I will
Mhm.
always watch The Next Generation and think of my gran. I can watch The Next Generation and smell like my gran's sofa. It's doesn't smell great, but it smells like home, you know? Deep
Absolutely,
Space
absolutely.
Nine, on the other hand, was entirely mine. And I remember like I would save up my allowance because Deep Space Nine didn't air as frequently as The Next Generation did, so I would have
Mhm.
to, like, save up my allowance and go and buy the cassettes. The cassettes, you know, which had 2
Sure.
episodes on them. I still have, like I've gotten rid of the cassettes because the cassettes are, like, moldy and don't last that long, but the cassettes for Deep Space Nine have, like there we go, Eric's done a wonderful job. The cassettes all have this absolutely beautiful
Oh
artwork
my
on them.
god, look at that.
Every two-part episode has this every, like, two-episode cassette has this wonderful hand-drawn picture on it,
Oh.
and there's a nice little art, like, I have that upstairs tucked away. As an art project, I do wanna do something with them, where there are, like, some absolutely beautiful ones, like the cover for, I think it's Our Man Bashir in the 4th season is, like,
Mhm.
a beautifully painted portrait. Just stunning, stunning stuff. But yeah, Star Trek D69 was, like, my personal Star Trek, and it
Sure.
really felt like because I was the age that I was, going from 10 to 14 to 15, it kind of grew up with me, which is again that kind of magic of art. And I mean, we're roughly the same age. I imagine
Mhm.
like you've had similar experiences. Like Buffy was one of those shows as well, where Buffy kind of begins as you're a teenager, and as you grow up, it becomes more complicated and more nuanced, and you grow up with
Mhm.
it, and it's like, oh, it's a cool vampire show as a kid, and then 2 years later, when you're dating girls, it's like, oh, it's a cool vampire show about how like when you sleep with a guy, he becomes somebody entirely different and monstrous. It's like, I get what this is about. Um, because I was obviously sleeping with a lot of guys who became radically different afterwards, and I was personally able to
100%.
relate to that. But like
100%.
Deep Space Nine was that for me. It felt like an evolution of Star Trek, like it pushed the boundaries of Star Trek, and I loved it.
Sure.
And I will say I have watched it straight through maybe twice since. I think once during the pandemic, it was weirdly my comfort watch,
Yeah.
because it does feel to me like, and again, this is Darren bold, controversial statement to start us off here. One of the last times that like Star Trek actually seemed to try to evolve, one of the last times to me the Star Trek franchise actually said, "You know what? The TV landscape around us is changing." Shows like The X-Files, shows like The
Mhm.
West Wing, shows like Buffy, they are moving towards a form of storytelling that is not quite the heavy serialized streaming dramas that we have today, which are just 8-episode movies, but it is instead moving towards something that is blending like clear episodic storytelling with larger story arcs that deal
Mhm.
with ethically ambiguous and morally complicated realities. And I was able to go, I can kind of grow up with this. And I feel like Star Trek never really managed to hit that peak consistently again. I'm very fond of, say, the 3rd and 4th seasons of Enterprise. I have a unforgivable soft spot for the 1st season of Star Trek Discovery. But like the franchise never, for me,
An
managed to
unforgivable. So, the first season of Discovery was fine. It was
yeah.
fine.
But it was trying, like, it was
Yes.
trying something that didn't entirely work, but it's like and again, this is something I'm sure we talk about Deep Space Nine. The
Mhm.
thing I love about Deep Space Nine is Deep Space Nine was also trying stuff that didn't necessarily work. I don't know how far you got into it. How far did you get into it in the, like, 2 weeks you've tried to compress the entirety of the Deep
Not
Space Nine
not
experience?
just 2 weeks because we were shooting the 5th season of Adventures Now, literally, I have mainlined 37 hours of Star Trek Deep Space Nine in the past 2.5 days. So, like, my
Wow.
brain is filled with Deep Space Nine, right now, but I just got to the end of the 2nd season. I just watched every episode, 1st and 2nd season, so I
So
didn't
you've
get
seen the
terribly.
Jem'Hadar. You've seen the Jem'Hadar.
Yes.
Okay, grand.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Um, so, and I have the episode listings in front of me, so we can talk about that. Like for me, like I Deep Space Nine, in this rewatch, I really was able to pinpoint the adversarial relationship that it took with Next Generation. Like the very first episode of Deep Space Nine, Captain Picard is poised as the bad guy. And I can see a young Jack just saying, fuck that, Picard rules. I'm done with this show forever.
Yeah, like in Emissary, like Picard shows up and he's like, "Hey, Cisco, the Federation has asked you to do a job," and Cisco's like, "Yo, fuck you!" Like it's like, "Fuck you, buddy.
You
I'm gonna do the job, but because I want to, not because you asked me
I
to."
don't want to take the job. You killed my wife, and I hate everything and everyone.
And Picard just kind of responds to that by staring into middle distance as well, which is
Right.
great. But
Right,
it is like
right.
it's so at odds with how modern franchising works. Where modern franchising is like, here's a beloved character showing up. Here's a
Mhm.
new character worshiping that existing character. So you, through the process of transference, can understand how much we worship the core branded franchise. Whereas
Yes,
Deep Space
yes.
Nine is immediately like, here's one of the most popular and beloved characters on television. Here's our new lead telling him to go fuck himself. Like
And even when we get through the entire story arc and he begrudgingly kind of accepts the position, like they're not cool at the end. Him and Picard are not cool at the end. And I think that to me set up the tone for Deep Space Nine as a younger Jack of just saying, this isn't the show for me. And like you said, like he's not the captain of a spaceship. He's the commander, not even of a Federation vessel. He's the commander of an alien vessel. Now as an adult, here's something I will say, and I don't say this very lightly, and might regret saying this. And I'm gonna talk quietly, so
okay.
maybe not all of chat hears me as I say, chat, you were right. Deep Space Nine is actually really good. Oh, oh, terrible.
But and again, a large part of that is the relationship between like Next Generation Deep Space Nine. I want to like put
Yeah.
my hands up and say I love Next Generation. Next
Mhm.
Generation will always be a comfort watch. So
Yeah.
like when I say I love that like Deep Space Nine has this adversarial, confrontational relationship with the Next Generation, it's not like I'm sitting there in my chair going, "Yeah, stick it to those fucking assholes." Like I'm not going put Picard in his place. But I love that consistently so much of the Next Generation is defined by so much of sorry, Deep Space Nine is defined by this effort of you already have the Next Generation at home. You
Mhm.
already have this like in many cases a platonic ideal of what a Star Trek TV show can be.
Yeah, yeah.
Why would we try to offer you more of that or a lesser version of that? And so instead you have this kind of almost punk rock aesthetic of well, actually, what happens if we're the young if we lean into the idea that we're the younger rebellious sibling here? We're like
Yeah.
and again, some of this will be minor spoilers for the show, but you mentioned like obviously the Picard stuff in the first episode. You just watched the Jem'Hadar. How does the second season of Deep Space Nine end? They blow up a model of the Enterprise D. They blow up a Galaxy class starship, which is the same class of ship that's used in the Next Generation.
Right.
There's slight spoilers for like Defiant in season 3, which is the episode that Deep Space Nine did to promote the release of Star Trek: The Next Generation, where
Mhm.
all of the ads were like William T. Riker is coming to Deep Space Nine, and shots of Jonathan Frakes showing up on like the set of Deep Space Nine, walking through the door and going, "You may have heard of me. I'm Commander William T. Riker, right?" And it's like obviously the most like we twisted their arm. The studio said you got to do some cross promotion for Star Trek: The Next Generation, and then you watch that episode. And for 5 minutes, it's like, oh my God, it's Riker, and he's the best in the world. And then there's a moment where Riker reaches up to his sideburns and peels off his sideburns to reveal that he has an evil goatee, and he is actually William Riker's evil transporter duplicate from that one episode of The Next Generation that everybody's forgotten. And it is such a deliberate and pointed troll. There, Eric got the exact shot. It's one of the great moments
Yes.
in TV history where it's like, I have a goatee. I'm actually evil Riker. And it's like, you have to imagine like Paramount being like, you guys were supposed to sell the Next Generation movie. Why is Riker's evil twin like driving us deep into Star Trek Deep Space Nine lore?
And Deep Space Nine is just like, you don't understand me, Mom. I'm rebelling.
And like it's like such an interesting energy because obviously like all the writers or not all the writers but most of the writers on Deep Space Nine began on the Next Generation. It was
Mhm.
obviously created by Michael Piller, who brought in Ira Stephen Bear. Bear served as showrunner or sorry script editor on the third season of the Next Generation, one of the great seasons of television ever made. He
Mhm.
left that because he felt that like he was being suffocated, he was struggling to be heard. Bear like Piller goes and recruits Bear and says, "You will run this show by yourself. You're an experienced TV producer. You
Mhm.
will have carte blanche to do whatever you want. I'm not going to sit over your shoulders." And like, there's a moment in the third season where Pillar goes like, there's a point where you made a choice that I disagree with fundamentally. And I understand that that's you growing up. Like, I understand that that's me having to step back.
Yeah,
Not
yeah.
being like, I'm not going to come in and tell you how to do your job. You made a different choice than I would. I respect that. Like, it means that you're an adult and you're in charge here. But like, the writers on there include like Renee Echevarria, who's one of the great Next Generation writers, Ronald D. Moore, one of the great Star Trek writers. These are people who wrote for like the Next Generation, who love the Next Generation, who have done the Next Generation, to its zenith, to the like perfection.
Yeah,
And they're
yeah.
coming in, and on Deep Space Nine, they're really like, how can we reinvent the wheel? What can we do that's new? How can we push this in a direction that it hasn't gone before? And I love that energy. That I wish more franchise media had that energy to it.
Absolutely. But it is like it's a hard sell. It's a hard franchise sell because of course you're saying, "Hey, everybody, you love this thing. This thing makes you feel really good and you show up every week to watch this thing." Now, what if we have a second thing that has approximately the same name, but it's everything that this one thing that you love ain't?
Yeah, like, I mean, and again, you've seen the photos, you know he's coming. Worf is obviously introduced in the 4th
Yes,
season of
yes.
the show, and, like,
Mhm.
that is obviously big franchise synergy brain. That's Rick Berman as, like, overseer of the entire Star Trek franchise being like, "You know what? We could add a Next Generation cast member and really boost the ratings." And the show is immediately like, "What if Worf is the biggest asshole you have ever met?" Like, there is something, and again, it's entirely in keeping, it builds from the Next Generation, but it's just
Mhm.
kind of heightened, where like every time Worf shows up on Deep Space Nine, every time like Worf has a plot, it's always like he is the most unpleasant person to deal with. He's great and we love him, but can you imagine working with Worf? And it's like it is
Right.
just such a fascinating energy when you compare it to like even the way the Next Generation treats like or even Voyager, the way
Mhm.
Voyager treats like Next Generation characters when they show up, like Barclay or Troy or whoever, where it's always like they're great, they're awesome, they rule. Don't you love Barclay? Don't you love Troy? Whereas Deep Space Nine's kind of like, Worf, bit of a dick. Bit of a dick.
Absolutely. Absolutely. One of the things that I noticed right away, because now that I'm an adult and now that I've been able to put kind of like my internal feud between the Star Treks behind me, I've been very, very much enjoying Deep Space Nine. I think it's absolutely wonderful. I love the fact that it's not a Federation ship and they can get away with having an explicitly sex filled holodeck. Like they make no qualms about like, oh, people are fucking in the holodeck
You
100%.
you haven't got to Meridian, the infamously like I did tell you by the way, if you were getting to Deep Space Nine, the 3rd season, you can kind of brush over because
Yeah, yeah.
I will talk about like why that is in a moment. But like Meridian, which is the Brigadoon episode of like the 3rd season of like Deep Space Nine, where there's a planet that
Okay.
only comes into reality every 7 years or whatever, every 70 years or
Nice.
whatever. But
Yeah.
like there's a subplot in there, and it's like one of those things where it's like I admire you taking the swing, but maybe you guys should have like a woman in the writer's room when you do it, where
Just
like
one
just throw in the
one or
idea out there,
two,
even a
yeah.
token one, like Lisa Klink. You don't have to send her to Voyager; she can work on Deep Space Nine. But like they have, like there's a subplot in there about Jeffrey Combs, one of the great actors, and in his
Mhm.
first Star Trek guest star role, there's a bit of trivia for you, plays a sleazy alien who hires Quark to create a deep fake of Kira so that he can have sexy times with her in the holosuite. And you're like, feel like you maybe should have got some notes on this subplot. I feel like, it's probably it, but living in the world that we live in now, we know it's exactly how people would use that technology.
Mhm,
But it
mhm.
is like, it's maybe a little bit, maybe scale back a little bit, maybe don't be as creepy horny on main.
Or maybe deal with the ethical consequences of being creepy horny on main. That's
Yeah.
also okay. Yeah, no, but that's a part of the show that I really like. I like that they get a little sleazy. I like that one of my favorite bromances is of like the possible Cardassian traitor and the Doctor just being gossipy little bitches. I love it.
Entirely like homoerotically coded, by the way. Like, and again, obviously that was never going to happen, and obviously it's over.
Mhm,
And again, one of the things that Deep Space Nine does very well is it like because it's written by Bear, and we want to be careful not to overstate this because like Bear has been like, you know. Berman was very supportive of our decisions. We were collaborators. We met every week. We didn't
mhm,
do anything on the show without telling Berman we were going to do it. How and ever, if you actually watch Deep Space Nine, there is a persistent like frustration with some of the limits that are imposed on Star Trek from
mhm.
above. And one of them is to your point, the idea that you can't have gay characters, because that is one of the big blind spots of Star Trek in the 90s. And obviously you have metaphors like the host on Deep Space Nine, which is the
Mhm.
episode sorry, in the Next Generation, which introduces the Trill, where like Beverly meets an ambassador and falls in love with him and he changes into a woman, and there's the push and pull. You have the Outcast, which is Riker with, I believe it's the Janai, the androgynous aliens, which are neither male nor female. But in each case there's always a bit of, well, you can only go so far, where I think
Yeah,
Frakes,
yeah.
who directed the Outcast, was like, I tried to cast a man in the role, and they were like, under no circumstances can you do that. There's a story of like the Outcast, no, not the Outcast, the Offspring, which Frakes also directed in the third season, where like there's a conversation where Guinan is explaining to Data's daughter about coupling, and there's like three
Sure.
couples in the bar, and she goes like, the man and a woman hold hands, a man and a woman hold hands, and Frakes is like, I tried to have two men holding hands, but like quite literally, David Livingston ran down from the Paramount production office, like under no circumstances is that allowed to happen. And what's
Ugh.
really interesting is that if you watch Deep Space Nine, they do Rejoined, which is the first like gay kiss in Star Trek. That's Terry Farrell kissing, I can't remember the name of the actor, Susan something. But like there is a gay kiss in there. It's directed by Avery Brooks. It's a very good episode. It's obviously explained through sci-fi logic or whatever. But in the final season, thank you very much, Eric, they do the episode with Odo and the other changeling. I'm trying to remember the name of it. Chimera, I think it's called. Where
Oh,
Odo
okay.
meets a male presenting changeling and they start linking. And they start linking in public. They
Ah.
start like touching and blending, because linking is portrayed throughout the show as an explicitly sexual act. And like all of the non-Starfleet characters, there we go. There's the Eric got it again. Fantastic. That's
Oof.
JG Hertzler's last. Wonderful work from Eric this week. Every week, but this week in particular. But like there's a moment where all of the non-Starfleet characters, like Kira, who is Odo's girlfriend, is like, if you need this, I understand. This is who you are. This is an essential part of your identity. You know, I'm uncomfortable as your partner in this. I feel like I can't fulfill you, but I respect it. I
Mhm.
understand. I want to be happy. Every single Starfleet character is like, well, I'm not against it, but do they have to do it in public? Like it is like there's one line like, "Can't he be gas somewhere else?" Like, I'm not against shape shifting, but can't he just like be gas somewhere? And it is such a like passive aggressive. The writers on Deep Space Nine very clearly being, there are things that we are not being allowed to do on the show, and it
Mhm.
makes us angry, and we should be able to do them. I do also want to
And
shout
the
out.
Federation is the bad guy. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, but not in a bad way. They're very touchy feely. None of them are like, "Oh, well, we hate changing." We like changing, but just not in public.
Yeah, yeah.
Not where kids could see. Um, can't they be gassed somewhere else? I think like that's a Colin Meaney line, which I love.
It's lovely. It's lovely. One of the things I've noticed, obviously, I'm only watched the first couple of seasons here. One of the wonderful, wonderful things I noticed right from the get go that keeps popping its head up every once in a while is Cisco's character. Here we have a commander, we have a leader who also has a family with him. Very contrasting Picard, who legendarily hates kids. Picard, that might be the episode one of just like kids on my spaceship. Fuck those kids. But Cisco is a very loyal, dedicated father, good father throughout the first couple of seasons. I haven't watched anywhere else, so I don't know if he is.
I love that there's
But
a sharp. You're implying that there's some sharp twist where like Cisco's like,
there,
"Fuck that kid." It's like
there could be. I don't know.
I
you
wash
could
my hands of Jake.
you could have actually me. I don't know. But
No, it's one of the great relationships in Star Trek. But
to
yeah,
me, the most remarkable aspect of that actor, whose name I will not remember because I don't remember names, but the most remarkable aspects of that
Avery
is
Brooks
his.
or Sarah Clofton. Avery
Say
Brooks
that
is
again.
Cisco. Avery
Okay.
Brooks is Cisco. Sarah Clofton is Jake.
Okay. Of Avery Brooks is his ability to code switch, which is not something we get to see a lot in Star Trek, where, when he is commander, when he is talking to anyone in the crew, he is very stern, very like his voice is deeper. He is very plainly spoken. But there's a couple scenes where we get to see the switch, and it is so fun. And as a father myself, it's something I do a lot myself, where it's like, oh, I'm in business mode now. The door's closed. What the fuck did you just do?
And again, the thing about Cisco, and you get into all this incredible the history of like fandom and stuff like that, where
Mhm.
everyone's all like, now we just complain about forced diversity. Back in the day, we were cool with like Cisco and Ripley and stuff like that. But you go back and you actually visit the Usenet boards, and there's a lot of like Captain Affirmative Action. Like there's a lot of like the worst stuff, the
Sure.
worst impulses of fandom there.
Mhm.
And very famously, like Brooks had to fight, and again, shout out to Bear. I do want to shout out I think it's What We Left Behind, which is the documentary, which is incredible, and I
Mm.
think Bear is very good there. Like Bear is like very candid and very like in that documentary, very honest about his own perceived shortcomings. Where he's like, there are things that I wish that I had done, and there are things that I wish I'd done earlier, and there are things that I wish I'd pushed back more strongly on.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
like Brooks is one of those guys where there was a lot of pushback about him early on. I don't know if you're familiar with his work on like Spencer for Hire and stuff like that.
Mm-mm.
Obviously, in the later seasons of the show, he has the goatee and the bald head, which I'm obviously wearing in tribute to Avery Brooks. But he has that very distinctive look, which is the look that he had when he was in Spencer for Hire. Thank you very much, Eric. There, and
Wow.
when he was on Deep Space Nine, they insisted that he shave the beard and the goatee and he grow his hair out, which I personally think is not the best look for him, and
Okay.
which he himself thinks is not the best look for him. And apparently, he had to fight for. In the third season, he gets to grow the goatee back, and in the fourth season, he finally gets to shave his head. Now, there were three reasons offered by the production team for why he had to have hair. The first of which was the generic, Picard is bald. We can't have two bald Star Trek captains. I'm not sure I buy that one. Second one is, oh yeah, people love Spencer for Hire so much. We need to distinguish this character from Spencer from Hire. And I'm like, I don't know if I buy that one either. And
Nope.
the
Don't
third
buy that
one,
one.
which is the one that I think Bear has come out and said he heard in meetings. I think Brooks has said he heard in meetings, which is we don't want the character to seem too urban to audiences.
Fuck. Look, listen to
So
that. Yeah.
yeah, and like it's incredible because he goes on, and I think like Cisco is for me. I love Picard. I love Kirk. I Janeway on depending on the day of the week could be incredible. Archer is such like an interesting cosm of like Bush era American psychosis, but I think
Mhm.
Cisco is my favorite Starfleet captain in large part because of like what you mentioned at Brooks, where Brooks is for me the perfect halfway point between like Shatner as this big, hammy, scenery chewing kind of like feed me.
Yes. Yeah.
And Stewart being maybe the best actor ever to appear in Star Trek, or one of the two along with Leonard Nimoy.
Mm.
And for me, Brooks manages to split the balance perfectly, where he, I believe, originated in opera. I think that's where like Brooks started out, and you could see that in the performance. Where you mentioned the code switching, but he can go from incredibly quiet to incredibly loud and incredibly hammy. You've watched
Mhm.
the first two seasons. There's a moment in Dramatis Personae, which is like an utterly forgettable episode written by Joe Manesky. But there's a moment where like the crew are being taken over by alien entities and fighting an alien war that's been waging for decades on the ship. And like
Yes, yes.
Cisco is attacked on the ship, and he like throws somebody into like the pit on ops and then climbs over the thing and jumps in after them. And that for me is a moment where I'm like, this is the energy of that character. Like this is the point for me where Avery Brooks is really honed into like what makes Cisco so compelling. Where like
Mhm.
there's, not to spoil later discussions, but like there's episodes like in the Pale Moonlight where like that entire episode is Cisco narrating like his dark night of the soul to the camera. Like it is
Mm.
him sitting in a chair speaking to you, the audience, through the pretense of there's the exact picture, through like the pretense of I'm recording a personal log, but I'm speaking to you, the audience member, directly, and it
Mhm.
is almost like a stage show. Where he's doing the inflections, he's making the grand hand gestures, and it is to me something I love about Star Trek in general. Where for me, classical Star Trek, and I go to like the 1960s TV show with like the production design, which is very theatrical, Shatner's performance, which is incredibly hammy, through to like the Berman era and the Next Generation, where like what I love about the show is the theatricality of it,
Mm, mhm.
where you have actors who are often caked in makeup and have to express themselves through like prosthetics that would like suffocate a small cat. But like you have there's this there's this necessity to be theatrical and loud and
Mm.
energetic. And like Brooks for me is like the perfect midpoint between Shatner's I don't know what we're doing and like Picard, like Patrick Stewart being like, no, I deserve an Emmy. In fact, I deserve an Oscar. I know this is a TV show, but I deserve an Oscar for this performance I'm giving.
Oh, right. And like not just his performance, but the writing of him as a commander is so starkly different from both of those captains, where you do get a very good sense of of Cisco as a unique personality. You know, there are situations in Deep Space Nine where Picard would have handled things very differently. Kirk definitely would have handled things very differently. I'm thinking specifically of ghost fucking. I suppose. Wait, in Deep Space Nine, it wasn't a ghost; it was a short-range psychic projection.
Yes, a hallucination. Yes. And again, like to speak of like racism, like his first romance, like that's Cisco's
Mm,
first romance in the show, and
yeah,
he had to
yeah.
fight. That was apparently originally written as a Bashir episode, I believe, and like
Oh,
Avery Brooks had to be like, actually, my wife is dead. I'm not married. I can be like a sexually active person on this show, and the writers were like, you know what? That's actually a good point. We should do that.
yeah, yeah. No, and so like we do get these, wonderful and unique characters in an environment that for a normal Star Trek fan is very different. Obviously, like there is still like the cavalcade of easy to apply makeup aliens because they are so close to the wormhole, which is always very fun. Where you say like, what kind of alien are we getting today? Are we getting a heavy prosthetic, or are we getting a different colored skin in different patterns?
Yeah. How famous is the actor we have cast to play this alien, and how willing are they to sit through 4 hours of makeup in the morning? Um,
Right? Shocked by how much we got of the Grand Negus.
Wallace Shawn, baby.
I assumed that was going to be a one and done episode, but he comes back.
And again, this is one of the things I love about Deep Space Nine. It's because the premise is a space station, because it
Yeah.
doesn't go anywhere. Characters can like keep coming to visit, and so you have
Yes.
like these expansive supporting casts where all the characters end up getting like built out ensembles. Where like you mentioned, like Quark obviously has his brother Rom, his nephew Nog, but he'll go
Mm.
on to have his Moogie, his mother, and the Nagus, and like you'll get Liquidator Brunt and stuff. Where you'll have this entire ensemble built around that character. You mentioned like Ducat, who is I think only appears a couple of times in the first two seasons, but he
Mhm.
goes on to have like there's the in the fourth season there's the character of Damar, who's introduced as the weapons officer on Ducat's ship, and he goes on to have this incredible Shakespearean arc over the remaining 3.5 seasons of the show, where when he gets his final scene in the finale, I'm like, get the tissue out. It's like there we go. Et tu Damar. But like yeah, like it
Mhm.
it has this incredibly expansive cast. And I do want to shout out again, you mentioned the Nagus, and the fact you
Mm.
thought the Nagus was one and done. This is the thing that I think separates Deep Space Nine from a lot of the Star Trek that followed. And I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
obviously, I'm thinking particularly of Voyager and Enterprise, where every TV show takes a
Oh, there
little
he is.
while.
There's that Negus. Great job,
Yes.
Eric.
Yeah, fantastic work. Every TV show takes a little while to figure out what it's doing, and the same is true of like Star Trek: The Next Generation. Famously, the first two seasons of Star Trek: The Next Generation not great. The third is like one of the greatest seasons in the history of television, right?
Mm.
But like, what typically happens is there are what might be called problem characters, and there are characters that just like do not work out of the gate, where you have a concept but you can't make the concept work. And like
Sure.
you're watching Deep Space Nine, the three that come to mind immediately in the first two seasons are Bashir. The show has no idea what to do with Bashir in the first three seasons, where he's just like he's horny, right? That's
That's
his defining
that's it.
characteristic. Yeah. Dax, right? Where like the character of Dax is clearly written as this old stoic advisor. The idea is the contrast of the old
Mm.
soul in a young body, and
Yeah.
Terry Farrell, who plays the role, is not. That's Esri Dax. Good call, Eric, but you slipped up on that one. Jadzia Dax, played by Terry Farrell. Good call. I feel I should pick on Eric. But yeah, you have like Jadzia Dax, who is played by Terry Farrell, who is another swing. That's from the episode Dax in the first season. That's Fionnuala
Oh.
Flanagan, beloved Irish character actor. I love that this should just be a recurring bit where like Eric just keeps trying to find
Because
pictures
there
of
are
Star
so
Trek.
many
Yeah.
Daxes. For those who are just listening to this and not watching the video, Eric posted the Picard palm
Great
in
job.
face meme. Perfect.
But like the thing is that Dax doesn't really work because they're trying to play it. They're writing her as an old character in a young body, and Terry Farrell isn't very good at that, right? That's not where
Right.
her energy lies.
Mhm.
And Quark obviously is very much a kind of a problem character as well, where like in the first 2 seasons, there are far too many plots where Quark is greedy, the station almost blows up. Why do the characters continue to let Quark be on the station? Just as like a storytelling energy, which just does not work either. But
Not only is Quark greedy, almost gets the station blown up, Quark is caught doing something incredibly illegal several times.
and Cisco's like, but he's good for the community. Like he brings good vibes.
But he runs the sex dungeon, so we have to let him stay on.
I'm a widower. I've been widowed for 5 years at this point. I can't. But the point is, though, like other shows, obviously, other Star Trek shows have their problem characters as well. I'm thinking, for example, on Deep Space Nine, it's Harry Kim is one, for example, is the big
Or
one.
on Voyager, yeah.
Voyager, sorry, on Voyager,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
Harry Kim, it's Chakotay. On
Yeah.
Enterprise, it's like poor Mayweather, but it's also like Hoshi Sato as well. And what typically happens in those shows is the writers try a couple of episodes around Merryweather and they just don't click. And they're like, okay, you go into the pile of like animatronic action figure extras where you get 3 lines an episode which amount to shields are down, Captain, they're coming at us fast, and that's it. That's your role. Where like famously, like Garrett Wang has talked about like how being on, or Garrett Wong, apologies, has talked about like how being on Voyager felt like a humiliation ritual for him at times, where it was like he would be given scenes he had to be around where he had no dialogue at all simply because he was a regular cast member and because he maybe like tried to raise his voice and object. Robert Beltran, who played Chakotay, has talked about how he was frustrated with the show because Chakotay was reduced to this exposition and at one point like was like Seven of Nine's boyfriend because they needed something for him to do. And what I like about Deep Space Nine is that while Bashir, Dax, and Quark do not work out of the gate, and like I will say, the Bashir, Dax, and Quark episodes in the first 3 seasons are some of the toughest hangs. They do not give up on like the premise of those characters. They don't move them back into the ensemble and kind of shuffle them around and say, okay, well, Dax's job is simply going to be technobabble from here on out. They keep trying to figure out which angle it is works for that character, which angle plays the actor's strengths. Like we've seen the actor do this in a scene, they're good at it. Okay, let's lean into it. And so Jadzia Dax is reconfigured from wise, stoic old man in like sexy young woman's body to like party animal who is incredibly charismatic and charming and who you love hanging out with. And that becomes her character. And they're like, that works. Bashir goes from like horn dog science dude to like Shakespearean like moral compass, like next generation killjoy character on the show, and that becomes an engine that works for him. And to your point,
for those of you, by the way, who have not seen Deep Space Nine, Darren is not exaggerating. Literally, our chief medical officer for the first 2 seasons talks about nothing but boning for 2 full seasons, possibly more.
Yeah. And again, like the Bashir episodes in the 3rd season are some of the worst episodes of television ever made. But then like the 4th season does like 2 Bashir episodes, which are 2 of the best episodes the show's ever done, or 3 Bashir episodes, which are 3 of the best episodes the show's ever done. Hippocratic Oath, Our Man Bashir, and The Quickening. All of which are like, we finally figured out what it is that Siddiq El-Fadil, or Alexander Siddiq as he was at that point, have figured out like what it is that this guy does well. And we figured out how to build an episode around it. And we figured out that like it's different from what we planned the character to be, but we're going to lean into it. So he's very good at doing self-righteous. So we'll lean into that. He's very good at doing like moral impassioned speeches. We'll lean into that. Less of the horn dog stuff. It's like clearly the actor is very uncomfortable doing horn dog stuff. That was maybe a miscall. But like, to your point about like the Nagas being one and done, fans hated the Ferengi episodes. And the Ferengi, again, to get back into like Star Trek prehistory, they were introduced in the first season, The Next Generation, as the great, you guys, you're not going to believe it. Like the original Star Trek had the Klingons and the Romulans, great iconic aliens who everybody loved and were like headlining these movies. Wait until you see what Star Trek The Next Generation is lined up for you. We've got little trolls with big ears, energy whips, that are also possibly, again, bears like, I was in the writer's room, also possibly anti-Semitic stereotypes.
Let's not put on airs. 100% anti-Semitic stereotypes.
They have large noses and big ears, and they talk all about money. And like, Bear is like, I was in the room while this was happening and felt very uncomfortable.
Yes.
And so Bear was like, can I take this part of Star Trek that does not work, where like
Mhm.
the Next Generation immediately trashes the Ferengi. It's like they don't work, throw them
Mhm.
away. They'll appear maybe once a year, and it'll be a comic relief episode. The Borg friendship with the Ferengi ended. The Borg are my new best friend now. Deep Space Nine is like, what if we take the Ferengi and we turn them into a multifaceted like culture and society? We give
Mhm.
them a civic structure, we give them like an actual arc, we give them real characters and emotional investment in them, and like give them a distinct perspective in this universe that doesn't treat them, as anti-Semitic stereotypes. And it is incredible because that is again the exact opposite impulse of what every franchise property would do now, where it's like
Yeah.
the fans hate the Ferengi. It's like, well, they're never appearing again. Instead, Deep Space Nine is like, the fans hate the Ferengi. So we're thinking maybe 2 Ferengi-centric episodes every year, right?
Huh? Huh?
Yeah.
We're just gonna keep feeling well, and this is was kind of the strength of episodic television, where you can have full throwaway episodes. I'm I forget it because I crammed so much in. It's probably season one is like the game centric
Move
species of
along home. Ella Moraine, count to 4. Ella Moraine, then 3 more.
what
Ella
what a
Moraine, and you
terrible
can see
episode,
Ella Moraine. You'll come with me. Fun
right?
fact: Bashir gets killed off early in that episode because he has to guest star on Star Trek: The Next Generation that week.
Very fun. But so like you have these kind of like big out there ideas, but it also gives you time to find an angle to find like, oh, maybe an actor or a character did something in this episode that felt great in an otherwise garbage throwaway episode, and we get to iterate and we get to learn from that. I was watching this kind of like half bemoaning the loss of episodic television, but also realizing that this was part of the turn. Like Deep Space Nine was part of the problem, as I want to say it's season 2 that has a 3-parter
Yes.
season premiere.
Yes, it's like the Circle, I can't remember the Siege, and I can't remember what the third one is. But yeah, the Lee Nallis story arc.
Yeah, the Homecoming, the Circle, the
Yes.
Siege, a 3-part season premiere.
Oh, you have no idea what's coming. Like you have no idea, Jack.
which by the way is a wonderful little storyline, and at like watching all of these little episodes, it does feel like a treat. Oh, we get what is that, an hour and a half, we get 2 hours
2
and
hours and a quarter, roughly. Yeah.
15 minutes of nothing but one story arc. What a treat. Until we only get treats and we want the little ones back.
But that's it. Like Star Trek Deep Space Nine does a good job of blending those. Where like famously the 6th season opens with a 6-episode arc, and like I remember being like, without getting into too many spoilers, presuming you're going to watch it. Like I remember when I got the 5th season finale. Again, one of the things I love about Deep Space Nine is the Next Generation does cliffhanger season finales, right? So it does like the best of both
Yes.
worlds. It does like no, it doesn't do reunification. It does like redemption. It does like Time's Orphan or whatever it is. It does like all this like cliffhanger ending, Descent Part 1. It does like a cliffhanger ending. You're going to have to wait all summer, and then we're going to pick up, but that'll be done in the end of an episode. And Deep Space, and sorry, next, and Voyager follows along with that, where Voyager does like Scorpion. It does, various other episodes like that, where it's like, here's a cliffhanger. The cliffhanger is basically like the middle act break of an episode. So you know that like by the time you get to the end of the season premiere, all the pieces will be back in place. Everything will have resolved itself. One of the
Mhm.
things I love about Deep Space Nine is that its season finales are all like game changing and forward looking. They all kind of realign what the show is. And I mean, you've watched the first two, so like the In the Hands of the Prophets is like actually Bajor's religion is going to be an issue going forward in terms of
Mm.
integrating into the Federation. The
Yes,
religious
yes.
beliefs of these people are going to create a conflict that is going to be very hard for our secular society to realize. And it's very telling that you get into something like you mentioned, like Homecoming, The Circle, The Siege, which is about like Bajor and is about this idea of maybe Bajor doesn't want to be part of your gigantic like Federation order. You second season finale, which you just watched, was the Jem'Hadar.
Mhm.
The ending of that episode isn't a cliffhanger like we're going to resolve this next week. It's like, no, the rules of the board have fundamentally changed. The underlying logic of the show is completely different than you thought it was. There is
Mhm.
a big bad out there in the dark. We know all about you and we are coming. And like so much of all of the arcs after that feel that way. They have like a big game-changing energy. And like the 5th season finale, I remember getting the VHS of that. And the way the 5th season ends, if anybody in the chat has seen it, it's absolutely incredible. It is just like a, can you even call the show Star Trek Deep Space Nine anymore? Like it's, and in any other show, you'd be like, okay, but like by the end of the first episode of the 6th season, everything will be back in place. And instead, the show takes 6 whole episodes to like get the pieces back in a rough alignment of what they were meant to be. And this is again one of those stories where you don't know how much is true, how much is made up, how much is like memory being kind of warped and kind of, told and retold over time by the cast and crew. Mentioned Bear says we always had a good relationship with Rick Berman, met with him every week, never lied to him about what I was doing. He was always very supportive. The other writers at Deep Space Nine are like, Bear may be being a bit diplomatic there. Moore says basically, we promised Berman that like this big thing that happened would be wrapped up immediately. We say we would do this big crazy thing, and Berman was like, "What are you doing?" And it's like we were like, "Don't worry, the pieces are going to go right back where they were." And then we didn't put them back at all. Like it ended up taking us 2 whole years, and then the show ended. And I think it's like Brian Fuller, who obviously he wrote a couple of episodes of Deep Space Nine. I think he is credited on a couple of episodes of Deep Space Nine. I think like Things Past started as a Fuller episode. The Darkness and the Light started as a Fuller episode. He ended up going to write on Voyager with Lisa Klink. But he says basically, when I was in the Deep Space Nine writers' room, the energy is so interesting because it's very clearly like, Berman can't fucking tell us what to do. Like, it's like, sure, he can give notes and stuff. There's the famous story that, like, you haven't seen it yet, the Defiant, which is the ship that becomes part of Deep Space Nine. For Star Trek First Contact, where the Borg show up, and there's a big battle for Earth in the Next Generation movie. Great movie. I think it's the best of the Next Generation movies by far. Berman allegedly has the idea of, during that battle, the Defiant should get blown up. And that will establish the stakes of the Borg invasion. We're blowing up this thing from Deep Space Nine. Oh my god, everything's serious. And apparently he pitches this. Again, this is allegedly never been confirmed. It's just something that like you hear whispered about in like interviews with Moore and stuff. Pitches this to Bear. And Bear sits there for a moment and goes, you can do that. It's your movie. You're allowed to do what you want. I just want you to know that next week the Defiant's going to be on Deep Space Nine. And apparently, as a result of that, there is a line in the First Contact where, like, Riker says, the Defiant, she's adrift but salvageable. But, like, the story that Fuller tells is that, like, apparently Berman says he had a great relationship with Bear. It's very hurtful to Berman that people say this or whatever, that they paint him as a villain. But according to Fuller, like one of the things with Voyager that happens at the same time is you have like the rotating door of like showrunners on Voyager, where the first showrunner on Voyager is Michael Piller. We've talked about this before. You could go back and listen. You could see Marty's eyes glaze over as we talk about this. But where Piller is basically ousted by the writing staff who forged in Mutiny, where they're like, if Piller stays, we're all quitting. So Berman says basically, Piller, you got to go. Jerry Taylor takes over. Jerry Taylor is team mom. She's been there since the Next Generation. She's also old. She retires. She passed away recently. Again, Taylor, really, really wonderful writer. Great work for the franchise. Really great writer of Janeway. She wrote 2 great Janeway novels, Mosaic and Pathways, which I would recommend. They're arguably better than any Voyager episode in terms of characterizing that crew. But she announces she's retiring because she's getting old. And what Berman does is Berman, instead of like bringing in an experienced executive producer like Bear, somebody who knows how to run a TV show on Voyager, he instead promotes Brannon Braga internally. And Braga is a great writer. I know, like, Star Trek fans like to rag on Braga, and there are reasons to rag on Braga. Go read some of his interviews where he's like horrible. There are all sorts of stories that are told about like Braga and like pitching to Braga and how unpleasant he could be. I would also point out the reason for that is that like Braga was a WGA intern who got a job on like the 4th season or the 4th season of Star Trek The Next Generation. He had never written anything except Star Trek. He was like really young. He started like in his 20s. And he was put in charge of a TV show, Star Trek Voyager, at the age of like 24, 25. If you were given that much money and that much responsibility, you're not going to be well adjusted. And I think he has mellowed in his old age or whatever. But the story that Fuller says is that, like, the reason that Berman did that, the reason Berman pointed at that 24-year-old across the room and said, "You're running Star Trek Voyager now. You're in charge of Voyager," is because he knew that he would not get the same trouble on Voyager from a 24-year-old that he was allegedly getting from Bear on Deep Space Nine. That there was never
Yeah.
going to be a situation where Braga would go, "Actually, you know what? Fuck you. This is what we're doing." And Berman would go, "No, I don't think you are." He's like, "You're right. I don't think we are." Um,
I think it's beautiful. I like it is it's always interesting when that like the business of making a show butts up with the artistry of making a show. And obviously that's a lot of Hollywood. But for a series that has run in so many iterations and for so long as Star Trek, it's maybe extra highlighted.
But again, it's so fascinating that you can see the history. Like, it's such a really interesting and it's,
Yeah.
again, it's all been covered very, very well, like Ian Spelling. Like, I will say it is to the credit of the people who work on Star Trek that it is as transparent as it is. That all
Mm.
these stories are told relatively openly. Like the 50-year mission, which is the oral history, which was produced over a decade ago now to mark the 50th anniversary of Star Trek. Like, those stories are all told like with no regard for like the polished sheen of modern franchise storytelling. Like, we're not talking about Voyager, but you should absolutely read that book and read about how horrible Kate Mulgrew was to Jerry Ryan and how like terrible Jerry Ryan's experiences were on that show, because
Sure.
that is the kind of thing that you just do not talk about in modern franchise media, where it's like, no, I was passing out between takes. They had to have an oxygen tank because my costume was so tight. It's I kind of love that, like how much of that is so transparent. And I will recommend also the Deep Space Nine Companion, which is a great book, which
Mm.
literally goes through every episode of the show. And it's great because the writers will be like, nah, that didn't work. They'll just be like, as much as this is like, you read the Next Generation Companion and everything is like, well, we were impressed that we managed to pull that off. We thought it was a big gambit. We're very proud of the episode. And you open the Deep Space Nine Companion, it's like, nah, it just didn't work. We were very tired, we were overworked, and we need to bang something together very quickly. I
Uh-huh.
would have done it again, but we learned our lesson.
Speaking of tight outfits, one thing that I noticed, I like, I was scribbling some notes here and there to make sure stuff to talk about. Nana Visitor is how I want to say how we pronounce
Yeah.
her name. What was it with the mid 90s and Tiny Pixie Girls? Because we have Nana Visitor in Star Trek Deep Space Nine and Sherry O'Terry on Saturday Night Live.
Nah,
Is
nah,
And by the
nah.
way, put her next to Sherry O'Terry. They are twins. It is amazing.
Again, Nana Visitor is one of those formative, like, you look back at Darren's life and it's like you're trying to put like a pin in something, and it's like something that explains something so fundamental about Darren's character. It's
Yeah,
like, yeah, no, Nana Visitor as Kira Nerys was like an activating moment, I think, for young Darren.
100%.
Where she is just
100%.
badass. And again, to your point, her entire character arc is like, I am the most unpleasant person to work with. I'm also entirely correct, but I am the most unpleasant person to work with. And again, like something that you just would not see on modern television, which
Mm.
which is like a sympathetic terrorist, where she is
Yes.
a character who has murdered. And again, you're early in the run. Like you've gotten to what's the name of the episode with Necessary Evil. Necessary Evil. You've gotten the flashback episode with Odo, right? Where
Yes,
Odo's
yes, yes.
remembering his investigation. And you remember like the twist in that episode is incredible. Like the twist
Is
is just
that Yeah, Odo has an unsolved murder after all of these years, and as it turns out, yeah, it's just Kira.
yeah,
I
like so much
I've
of the
lied
episode
to
is
you our entire relationship. Sorry.
yeah. So much of like the flashback of that episode is like the Cardassians are trying to stitch up this young innocent Bajoran Kira who will go
Mhm.
on to be my friend. And so you're watching the flashbacks going, oh, Odo's going to prove her innocence. Odo's going to figure out she didn't do it. Odo's going to prove that it was somebody else who did it. At the end of the episode is, by the way, I know you did it. I'm like,
Amazing.
yeah.
But and not just that, but like there is what is it? Let me look through here. Like battle lines where they're like finding new religious leaders. A lot of the season 2 3-part opener is just like there's civil war happening on Bajor. Government is getting mixed up with political and religious extremists.
What are the odds?
What are they?
Like again, like the thing about like going back and watching the show, because I watched it again during COVID, is like how much of the show remains even more relevant. Where like there's
Yes.
again slight spoilers for the 4th season premiere, which is The Way of the Warrior, which is like a 2-part movie length episode, which is just incredible. But like
Mhm.
the entire plot of that episode is like slight spoilers, Jack. The Klingons have decided that they're going to invade Cardassia, and
Sure.
The reason that they give publicly, and the reason that for like 2/3 of the episode that they give, is we believe that there are changelings on Cardassia. Like, we believe that the changelings have gained control of the Cardassian government, and they're going to destabilize, and like they could launch an attack against the Federation, the Klingons, at any time. So we have to act now. And it's like around the 2/3 mark, you have like Worf meet Gowron, the head of the Klingon Empire, and Gowron's like, probably not. There probably aren't changelings on Cardassia. We just needed to invade something. It's like my political position has become less stable, and we just need a war to bind the Klingon Empire together. And Cardassia seemed like as good a target as any. And it's like watching that, like, this was a show produced in the late 90s. Watching that, like, in the context of the Afghanistan war, is just
this
like
this was years before WMDs were part of the cultural zeitgeist. Yes.
Yeah, it's stunning. And like, again, you mentioned the Bajor stuff, but like the In the Hands of the Prophets, which is the first season finale, which is just incredible. But that is about the teaching of religion in schools, and it's about like trying the new. And again, it's, to your point, it's about politics. It's the new leader of Bajor, the Bajoran Kai, basically the Pope, has like died in battle line. She's been left on a distant planet, and there's now this election to pick who's going to be the new Kai. And you have this Kai Wynn show up on the station. Vedic Wynn, apologies, show up on the station. Slight spoilers for Jack if he hasn't seen how that plot resolves itself. But Vedic Wynn shows up on the station and is like, I object to the way that you are teaching these kids about science. It's actually about God. You need to be teaching the kids that God lives in the wormhole, and everything that happens in the wormhole is because of God. You shouldn't be teaching them this like evolutionary science. And obviously, that was a big factor in the 90s. You had big debates over creationism and stuff like that. But it's so wild to watch it now because it is so transparently like, Wynn maybe doesn't even believe this nonsense that she's peddling. She just sees this as a wedge issue that she can use to like push her campaign like politically forward. She can use this to generate headlines and coverage, and can move from being an outside candidate to being the favorite to become the new religious leader of Bajor. And it is something that like you watch that in the 90s, it was very sharp and very well observed, but it's even more like pointed now.
Oh, stinging. Well, and the stark contrast between DS9 and Next Generation, where Next Generation would have these wonderful moral episodes, but usually they wrapped up pretty cleanly. Like, you know, Picard argues right and true morality. We found the impossible moral question. We solved it. Don't worry about it. But Deep Space Nine keeps it relatively sloppy. And I kind of like that, because it's like we found a resolution where not as many people will be killed. And maybe this will be a problem later, but we also have a space station to run, so fuck it.
and because like the thing about like the original Star Trek and Star Trek: The Next Generation, that even when they did an ambiguous ending, and I'm thinking of like The Hunt, which I know is an episode that Bear, I believe, heavily rewrote, which is the one where you have, or The Hunted, where you have like the metaphor for Vietnam veterans, and you have this idea of a society that has placed all its like traumatized veterans on a distant moon or prison planet, and and they break out, and the end of that episode is like the characters, like they all storm the Capitol and they're holding guns at everybody's head, and it's like, man, this is a really tense, dangerous situation. And Picard is like, well, Prime Directive means we can't interfere. We're gonna beam back to the ship and fuck right on off. And you never find out what happens on that planet. And like the thing about Deep Space Nine is because it's in a stationary location, and because Bajor is quite literally not going anywhere, all of these things end up having consequences. All of these things end up like accruing mass, and things that are seemingly unimportant end up being like vital to the ongoing story arc. I mean, you mentioned the Ferengi, right? And again, Bear is he was quite candid that he did this deliberately. The Dominion, which goes on to be like a driving force over the second half of Deep Space Nine.
So far, we've only been hinted at the Dominion in season 1 and 2. Yeah.
Do you remember the first time you hear the word Dominion?
Is that's a Negus episode. That is that's right. A throwaway Grand Negus episode.
Yeah, Yeah, the kind of thing that like Star Trek fans are getting really angry online about having to watch. And like Bear's like, no, 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 no. The next 5 years of the show are all contained in this. Like they're bartering over, is it like Tula Berry wine or something? Like
Yes, exactly. And like cheap face painted aliens.
the Doji, like played by Brian Thompson, if I remember correctly. And like the big reveal of that episode is like, actually, we don't have the leverage to negotiate. Like it's like,
But also, this one throwaway episode will be the linchpin for future big bad episodes. Loved it. Loved it. Yeah. So fun. Okay, we've been talking about Star Trek Deep Space Nine for 1 hour exactly. I'm gonna try my best to be an adult. Let's look at some super chats, which I'm sure are full of Deep Space Nine questions. So don't worry, we're not stopping. But
we're taking a bit of a breather. We're being responsible adults. Marty isn't in the room anymore. One of us has to take responsibility.
Exactly. All right, so let's go here to this chat. All right, let's see. We don't need no badges. 176 eps of DS9, 2 hours to cover it all. Go. Obviously, we won't get all of it. Here's what I will say is I will continue watching this, mostly because I bought the entire series on DVD twice.
Oh, because yes. Yeah. Tell the story.
Okay, so there are two versions. By the way, if you are interested in physical media and media preservation, as I am, there are two versions of the Deep Space Nine complete series. Oh, and a lovely Blu-ray, absolutely.
No, this is the DVD. This is the good DVD.
Oh, are those the good DVDs? Okay.
Yeah, the clamshell, impossible to open.
So
you can talk. I'm going to try and open this.
There's one version of the complete series on DVD that is in a nice small package, but apparently in order to fit more episodes on fewer discs, they upped the compression amount and they look absolutely terrible. Luckily, I was able to find the complete series on the old versions where it's only 4 episodes per disc on eBay used with some minor case damage for a really reasonable amount. I want to say I paid only $50 for the entire series.
That's incredible.
Right now the area under my TV is nothing but Star Trek Deep Space Nine. And what I will say is it is really annoying watching every episode on these old DVDs. One, you only get 4 per DVD. You have to go into each episode and then go to play each. It's a terrible. I'm so glad we no longer are doing DVDs.
Do they have like the menu? Like, so like every time you put it in, it also takes like a solid 30 seconds to load while they play the theme and a CGI runabout goes by and like those cards interface appears. Yeah.
And then, there's like a 10-second audio loop of random space and computer noises that
beep, 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 beep.
It's terrible. It's absolutely terrible. But I'm going to continue watching all of them because I'm having a really great time, even with the bad episodes going, man, no one's going to remember this stupid episode.
And then you're like, but in the middle of the 7th season, you're like, wait, they're bringing back the board game?
Wait, the board game race was actually important to the plot?
Alan Moraine is really Odo's father?
Oh my God. Pierre Pyro, thank you for the super chat. Should someone start the next generation from season 3? Season 1 and 2 are bad. I am of the opinion that there are good episodes within season 1 and 2. I personally like the pilot episode. I think the pilot episode's really fun.
Yeah, I mean, off the top of my head, I think it's oddly enough the ones where they're just ripping off the original Star Trek are good. Like, for example, is it like Home Soil, which is just the devil in the dark, but what if like glitter instead of like the Horta, which is very good.
I want to see. Second season has like the Klingon exchange program with Riker going on a Klingon ship.
Yeah, the second season has like 3 of maybe the best Star Trek episodes ever made. Measure of a Man, which is the one, the Data on trial episode, which is incredible. If you get the Blu-ray, that has an extended cut of the episode, which is an hour long, which is just like wonderful because that doesn't exist anymore. How many 80s TV shows have director's cut episodes? But that is the one where Data is put on trial and like Picard has to defend him. And it's just pure like magic because it's Patrick Stewart orating about what is a Starfleet was founded to seek out new life. Well, there it sits. And it's just beautiful. It's
That's a great
gorgeous.
episode. Great episode.
Yeah, and you mentioned like the Klingon exchange episode, but you also have like Q Who, for example, which is the episode that introduced the
Yes.
Borg. And while that's like important for continuity stuff, it's also just great because it's the one where like Picard gets humbled. It's like it's such
Mm.
a good episode because the entire point of the episode is like one of the big issues with early Star Trek: The Next Generation is they're all perfect all the time.
Yeah.
There's like, is it Lonely Among Us, where Riker is giving a guided tour to a bunch of ambassadors, and for no reason whatsoever, he's like, by the way, we're all vegan here, you primitives who eat animals, you dirty, filthy primitives. Or the one where they beam like a bunch of frozen people on board from like the late 80s. Yep, the Cele, good call. Eric doing some incredible work here this week.
Eric, we
yeah.
are so sorry. We
are. I mean, this is like, I remember when we used to do backdrop episodes, or like in the frame when it was at the old company, and like I felt so bad when I'd be like, I'm going to talk about Star Trek. Omar and Jesse, here are a list of 10 specific shots that I want from 178 episodes of The Next Generation. Good hunting.
Mm.
But yeah, like they have the one where they beam the frozen 80s dudes on board, and like you have like like fucking what's the guy from Gordon Gekko storming onto the bridge to negotiate with the Romulans. You're like, okay, we get it. We get it, Gene. Like, your future society is perfect. Whereas, like, the thing about Q Who is that that's the one where it's like, actually, there are situations where they're not. There are situations where Picard doesn't know everything. So, yeah, I mean, I would say, though, the first two seasons are very rocky. I would say the good to bad ratio is somewhere in the region of, like, one good episode to maybe 3 or 4 or 5 bad ones.
Absolutely, but I think if you are committing to a rewatch, there is also like some fun academic lessons in those bad episodes. Watching them get to season 3 is very satisfying.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing about Deep Space Nine. It's the thing about how TV shows used to work when they like had this iterative season where like you're about to watch season 3, and I don't want to spoil it too heavily. Season 3 of Deep Space Nine for me is not a season of TV that really works. And it's like I remember like on rewatch just like crashing and burning because it has like maybe the three opening episodes of that season are incredible. Like they're 3 of the best episodes of Deep Space Nine that's ever been made. And then there's like 20. There's a slog of 20 that follow it. And it's just like none of this is working. But what's really interesting is after you watch that, you watch the 4th season. And the 4th season is one of the great seasons of TV ever made. It's like one of the, it's the platonic ideal of a season of television. It has maybe 2 bad episodes in it. The Muse is one of them, and I can't remember what Shattered Mirror is probably the other one, right? But it has like 26 episodes, and 24 of them are bangers, right? And when you're watching them, every single episode of that 4th season that works, you are like, that is rooted in a lesson that they learned during the 3rd season. It didn't work there, but instead of throwing it out with the bathwater, they're like, how can we tweak it like just 10 degrees and end up with like so for example, like the big example is the 3rd season opens with a 2-part episode, The Search Part 1, The Search Part 2, right?
Okay.
It's a big opening event episode. It's very good. It's one of the better episodes of the season, right? But the 4th season scales upward and goes, what if, and hear us out here, instead of a 2-part episode, it was an episode that was 2 episodes long. What if it was like what if we open with an actual freaking movie, right? And it's like, you're sold. They have like, the 3rd season's like, what is the Dominion? What's the Dominion doing? You get to like, the die is cast like later in the season. And they're like, okay, we figured out what the Dominion are. And then the 4th season's like, and then we run with it. Then it's like, what if we just do, what if we do that episode that worked? We were like 4 or 5 times. It's like, that's a good plan you got there. Like, so even something like, say, The Visitor, which is one of the great episodes of television ever produced, which is the one about like Cisco and his son, and it's heartbreaking, and I cry every time I watch it. That is very clearly them looking at like the episode of Explorers in the 3rd season, which is a very good episode about the relationship between Cisco and Jake. But Explorers kind of inert. It doesn't really have like a dramatic core. So they're like, that was pretty good. What if we did it again? But this time there were like a compelling, dramatic, like push through the episode so that it was more than just the 2 of them hanging out and having a good time. And it's like, that is how television used to work, where it was like, you iterate, you tweak, you learn. Something works, something doesn't work. You lean more into what works, you lean less into what doesn't work, or you figure out why it didn't work and you adjust it and you try again. Like, I do love that. And I feel like, yeah, if you jump straight into the 3rd season of The Next Generation, where it's just like, boom, the thing just goes. You do miss like the experience of like watching the guy at the bar, like trying to mix the right amount of cocktail, where he's like, is that the right measure? And
right?
that is, yeah.
But like, and I understand, like, time is precious, time is
Yeah.
valuable. And so, we don't want to waste it on bad things, but is the journey worth the
Yeah.
destination? That's my feelings on it. I do understand if someone just wants to start from season 3,
I
though.
will also say, like, one of the things about Star Trek is that line in, Futurama where, like, Fry says it, and it's very sad and it's very funny, but it's also kinda true where it's like, at a time when I didn't have a lot of friends, that TV show made it feel like I did. The thing about,
Hmm.
like, Star Trek is that it does the ensemble. You feel
Yeah.
the ensemble hanging out, and you feel like getting to grow and getting to like each other and, like, figuring out, like, the chemistry between them. Like, the thing about Deep Space Nine is the Next Generation is all one big family. So, like, Worf and Geordi have a relationship. Geordi and Riker has a relationship. Geordi and Data have. Everybody has a little nexus, and every relationship is slightly different within that. The thing about
Hmm.
Deep Space Nine, which is so interesting, is that like they all have their own little subclusters. Where like I don't know that like Bashir has a particularly like developed relationship with Odo, but like Bashir has a very dynamic relationship with like O'Brien and Garrick and Dax and all this sort of stuff. Or Dax has a unique dynamic with Worf, but does she hang out with Odo? I don't really know. Quark and Odo, they hang out a lot, and that's very cool. But does Quark have like a relationship with, I don't know, Jake? Probably not. That would be inappropriate.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
No, it's fun. It's fun, and that's kind of the joys that I'm finding in Deep Space Nine is that more sloppy, like
Yeah.
the sloppy setting. Which I'm not going to say that again because that sounded bad.
Inappropriate. That sounds like something that happens in the holosuite. Um,
Oh, Sino's the Hedgehog. Quark is best character and love root beer scene in DS9.
the root beer scene is the scene from the fourth season premiere, The Way of the Warrior. Fun fact about that scene is added after they decided to turn it into a movie, right? Because obviously, 2 episodes of like 45 minutes apiece, you have to factor in credits and opening credits and closing credits for each of
Yeah,
those
yeah.
2 episodes, which means that you have about 5 minutes of change if you put them together and air them as one episode. So you need to write something that fills that gap. That's something, and yes, Eric got it. That is the root beer scene, the one that you had a moment ago with Garrick. Um, but like that scene is not plot centric in any meaningful way because it has to be cut when you air that episode in syndication. When you air it as Way of the Warrior Part 1 and Way of the Warrior Part 2, that
Mhm.
scene is cut. But it
Sure.
is so incredibly load bearing because it is like what the show is about. And again, slight spoilers, you're going to get to it eventually, but it is these two alien characters in this show while all this stuff is happening around them, while like the Klingons are going to Cardassia, while the Federation is preparing for a war on their doorstep. A Cardassian and a Ferengi sit down and have a conversation, and they talk about like what the Federation means to them. And they use the
Mm.
metaphor of root beer, where like Quark is like, look, this is the thing I got in because humans fucking love this shit, right? It's like they just love this shit. I can't stand it. But it's sickly and it's sweet and it doesn't have any like texture to it. It's got no grit to it. And it's
Yeah.
like, does that remind you of anything? And it's like, maybe it does. Like, you know what the really insidious thing is though? If you drink enough of it, you start to like it. And it's like, that is just such a perfect poetic encapsulation of like these characters, their relationship to each other, their relationship to the show, their relationship to the Federation, and the show's relationship to the larger Star Trek franchise, where it's a little bit skeptical, but it's all entirely superfluous. It's not plot centric. You can cut it, you can lose nothing in terms of narrative, but it's such a perfect scene. But yeah, shout out. I love that scene so
Beautiful.
much.
Beautiful. Okay, over on Ko-Fi, Marith says, "Do y'all think Strange New Worlds stands up outside of knowing the rest of Star Trek, or is it only good if you know the body of Star Trek? Also, just make Marty watch some Star Trek. Marty watches too much anime to watch Star Trek. He's busy."
And plays video games. Like as somebody who like
That's
tried playing video games recently, like I could be watching like 10 different TV shows while doing this. I'm enjoying it, but it's like
yeah, yeah.
I should bite my lip on this. You've not watched Strange New Worlds. You've given up on new
I've
Star
given
Trek.
up on any new Star Trek since Discovery season 2. That was the
Yeah, which
last
is
new Star Trek.
a good call. Like I mean again, I say this as somebody who watched it because of my job and like I don't want to be too mean because every Star Trek is somebody's first Star Trek, and
Yeah.
it's perfectly valid if this is your Star Trek. And if you love this Star Trek, that's your Star Trek in the same way Deep Space Nine was mine. And I'm honestly like delighted for you. I think it's incredible that you have a generation of people for whom Discovery or Strange New Worlds will be an activating moment for them. And I think
Mhm.
that's incredible. I do find myself personally, my big issue with like Strange New Worlds is that like as somebody who has watched all of previous Star Trek, almost every episode of Strange New Worlds feels like a reheat. It feels like we have this
Sure.
at home. And I will say,
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
for the old site where we used to work, I used to do like coverage of Strange New Worlds, and I would find it so frustrating that like so much of my coverage of that show would be, oh yeah, this is like 10% of Fight or Flight mixed with like 20% of the Outcast, mixed with like 5% of like Rapture, and they're all thrown in a bundle, and it's like nothing I haven't seen before as a Star Trek fan. It's just
Mhm.
things that I recognize. So I do wonder if it's like a show that maybe plays better as somebody's introduction to Star Trek, where it's just like, this is what Star Trek does. This is what Star Trek is. This is Star Trekky, if that makes sense. In the same way, it reminds me a lot of Voyager. Voyager has the same sort of thing for me, where it's like almost every episode of Voyager, you're like, I remember when Picard did this. Like, I have a
Right.
like a tingling little memory in the back of my head of like the time like Picard hunted a wormhole alien, or the time Picard got abducted by the Borg, or the time that like plot for plot, beat for beat, you're like, they've done this before, because there are only so many plots you can do when your starting premise is you're on a futuristic starship that is traveling through space.
Yeah.
And
And
you know,
they've been around for so long, and of course, the new writers are fans of the old series,
yeah,
like, it's going to naturally
eat its own tail.
regurgitate, and, maybe that's a good sign that we just need to take a break for, 10 years. Just take a break for 10 years and come back.
Or or do the Deep Space Nine thing, because the thing about Deep Space Nine is the nature of Deep Space Nine, where you're on a station, means
Yeah.
you can't. You have to take those toys away, and every once in a while, you'll see them do, like, a regular Star Trek episode, like, and it happens every once in a while, where, like, Deep Space Nine, like, tries to do a premise that could work on, like, the Next Generation, like,
Yeah,
Dramatis
yeah.
Personae could work on the Next Generation, for example. That's
Mhm.
very similar to Mass, like, anytime Joe Manesky, and I love Joe Manesky's one of my favorite Star Trek writers, so I'm not dissing him, but every time Joe Manesky shows up to write for Deep Space Nine, you can tell that he's like, well, I really just like dusted off this old script I had for the Next Generation, and I guess the Voyager staff were busy that week, so I guess O'Brien's kid is going in the time portal this week. Like there is that kind of sense to it, but most of the time you can't do that with Deep Space
Mm.
Nine because it's on a station. It's
Yeah,
on a
yeah.
so you can't have what if there's a nebula, and it's like, what, did they just not look out the window and notice the nebula last week? It's like, where did the nebula come from? I do think that like that is maybe the future. I would like to see more Star Trek shows that like took a big swing like Deep Space Nine did. Like my
Mm.
big fantasy is, and it's not going to happen particularly now, given like what's happening at Paramount, but like Paramount like driving a dump truck full of money up to like Taylor Sheridan's house and being like, make a Star Trek show, and it's like, do anything you want, just put Star Trek brand on it, and it's like, yeah, well, my premise is Kurt Russell is like on a planetary colony and it's in the desert and he has to like ride space horses, and I'm like, fine, just do that, because that
Yeah.
that would look nothing like any Star Trek we've ever had, and it'll be new and interesting, and it'll inject new stuff into the mix, so that
Hmm.
any future Star Trek can draw from that and can like it can just like add something exciting to the great link that is Star Trek.
Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah.
RW5096, thank you for the super chat. Any thoughts on Voyager doc that hasn't been released yet, that was crowdfunded years ago? Loved the DS9 one. Thanks for the Trek talk, guys.
The Deep Space Nine one's incredible, which is the What We Left Behind, which
Mhm.
is again and that was also crowdfunded. And I remember going to a screening of it in Dublin, going to a cinema full of
Oh.
my people, which was just an incredible experience. But like just like so candid, which I loved about it, where like all of the actors were like, and and the documentary was actually like really charming, because it was not just about Star Trek and not just about Deep Space Nine. It was like, actually, here's a bit about Avery Brooks's life.
Mhm.
Here's a bit about like what Alexander Siddig's been doing in the past couple of years. Here's what Nana Visitor gets up to now. Here's what Ira Stephen Bear is trying to do. Here's like at one stage during the documentary, they like bring the writers together, which is incredible, and ask them to pitch like an 8th season of Deep Space Nine. It's like, imagine a universe where like CBS come and give you like $8 million, and you got to make like a like Lego sequel series of Deep Space Nine, and it's incredible because they're in the room and they're pitching together, and you're watching it going, if they did this, there would be literal riots in the street. But that is exactly what you hire these guys to do. Where we're like, the starting premise is, one of our characters is going to turn out to be a terrorist again, or one of our characters is going to be murdered off screen, or there's going to be this new hook. We're going to take something that was core to the show, we're going to blow it up immediately. And you're like, I can already hear the internet screaming in agony at your proposal. And
Mhm.
I'm like, but that is what I love about you guys. I do the Voyager documentary is fascinating to me because so much of what we know about the production of that show, and again, I want to shout out like Cinefantastique, which is a really great magazine. The archives, I believe, are available online if you know where to look. I don't think we can advocate legally, but if you do look at like where if you can find them online, very readable, very candid, in real time, writers, actors, everybody involved talking about the show, and at times like waging very transparent wars over the creative direction of the show in the columns of these magazines, where they're like, well, I really didn't like that episode. It's like, didn't you write that episode? It's like, yeah, but it wasn't my idea. Uh, and I do kind of wonder, like, would the Voyager documentary be a lot of that? Where it's like, I kind of wonder, like, the version of Voyager, based on just like listening to people like, say, Brian Fuller, who has gone on podcasts talking about the show, or who's talked to like the 50-year mission, or Ronald D. Moore, who very famously, like, you know the story of Ronald D. Moore in Voyager, where he was like, he did Next Generation. He opted over to Deep Space Nine. At the end of Deep Space Nine, basically Deep Space Nine becomes a narrative dead end for the franchise, because it's like, we're not commissioning a new show. There's only going to be one show on the air. It's going to be Voyager. When Voyager ends, it'll be Enterprise, or it'll be untitled fifth Star Trek series at that point. And Brannon Braga's like, I'm going to create untitled fifth Star Trek series at that point. But the issue is that they go to the writing staff on Deep Space Nine and they say, would you guys like to hop over to Voyager? Join us for our 6th season, for our 7th season. And Bear apparently, like, very candidly says to every writer on his staff, it's not going to be the same as our writer's room. Just so we're clear, like, if you make that choice, that writer's room is very different. It's not going to have the same attitude that we have. You're not going to feel free in the way that we have to do these big things and these big ideas. And Renee Echevarria very politely says, not interested. I want to go off and do my own stuff. But Ronald D. Moore, who, to be clear, writing partners with Brannon Braga for, you know, the better part of a decade. They started working together when Braga was like first an intern during the 4th season. I think is it Reunion, which is the episode that introduces everybody's favorite character, Worf's son Alexander, is a collaboration between Moore and Braga. And Moore and Braga like work together throughout like Star Trek: The Next Generation. They're very good together because like Braga is very good at science fiction-y high concepts, and Moore is very good at character drama. So when you put the two of them together, you end up like this really good mix of like something that does everything Star Trek can do. And they do the first 2 Next Generation movies. They do Generations, which they're not happy with, and they do First Contact, which they are happy with, broadly speaking. And Moore is like, I'm going to go to Voyager. And again, the wonders of like being candid, talking about your work, where it's like, I had been watching Voyager. I was like, this show is not living up to its potential. I was like, you know what that show needs? Some Ronald D. Moore energy, baby. I'm gonna move over. I'm gonna reteam with my mate Brannon, who I've written a couple of Star Trek movies with, who we got on like a house on fire, and we're gonna fix that show. And I have like memos and notes and everything I want to do with it. And he says like he was on that show for I think about a grand total of 6 weeks. And to his credit, like 3 of like the first 6 episodes of the 6th season of Voyager have like a Ronald D. Moore credit on them. I think he has a credit on Equinox, he's a credit on Barge of the Dead, and he has a credit on Survival Instinct, right? And they're all Ronald D. Moore episodes in that they're all like really dark and weird and unpleasant in ways that Voyager isn't usually. But it becomes very clear early on that like it's not the same atmosphere. He talks about like, and again, need to preface this with allegedly. According to Brian Fuller and according to Ronald D. Moore, in an account that I am sure would be disputed by Brannon Braga and by Rick Berman, allegedly, Berman basically uses the arrival of Moore to like poke Braga's insecurities. To be like, maybe I should have hired Moore to run Voyager. Maybe, you know, maybe I didn't pick the right guy, you know? Because like Moore comes in and Moore is like, I have some big ideas for Voyager. I think we're gonna fix Voyager. And allegedly, according to Fuller, Berman's like, no, you're not. Like, we're not. I saw what you guys did on Deep Space Nine. Didn't much care for it. That shit ain't happening here. So Berman's response is to like poke Braga and go, you know what? Maybe Moore has a point. Maybe Moore should be running this writer's room. Maybe Moore should be like, maybe we should all be listening to Moore, right? We love his episodes, right? And that apparently pokes Braga's insecurities, and Braga apparently like ends up having this big tug of war with Moore that ends up with Moore being shoved out of the Voyager's writer's room. And he talks about like after 6 weeks on Voyager, like just shattering his love of the Star Trek franchise, of being like, I loved this thing so much. I was inside it for so much of my life. It was something that I never thought was going to end. And it is incredible how quickly that became like a really sour experience. And he's talked about how, you know, his version of Battlestar Galactica. That is just his pitch for Voyager. Like, that is
Yeah.
very transparently, like, more being like, I have some notes on how to fix Voyager. They should be under constant pressure. They should be making hard moral decisions. Then nothing should be easy. They should have low resources all the time. And it's so fascinating that she's like, well, I'll show them. I'll write my own Voyager with like Cylons and nukes.
Yes. And it turned out great, except for the series finale.
One small thing.
just one, just one. Like the entire series, phenomenal, except for the very end. Literally, the last
Angels.
5 minutes.
Angels.
The last 5 minutes. If you just cut that out,
It's incredible because it is quite literally like it was angels, and I'm like, was it?
All right, Sir John Arbuckle, please talk First Contact, Angry Picard versus Borg Queen.
You're not a First Contact head, I'm gathering, right? Yeah. Are you like a T?
The Borg for me is such a phenomenal enemy. Just the big bad to end all big bads. And as soon as you introduce the Borg Queen, it's all stupid. Which I know was introduced in Voyager.
The things no, she wasn't. She was introduced in First Contact. And she was introduced by Brannon Braga, which gives it like a hint of the issues that we talk about with Brannon Braga. When I'm like, he's a 24-year-old guy who has been given unlimited money, possibly unlimited amounts of cocaine, who can say, and is like, yeah, I've decided I'm going to create like a weird necronomic dominatrix. And it's like, sure, why not? Like, it's like, like in First Contact, the Borg Queen literally gives Data a blowjob. Like, it is like explicitly a blowjob. And it is so weird because like the rest of that movie is like, you know, we're just doing standard Star Trek stuff. And it's like, yeah, but what if Data were like tied to a table while a sexy, slimy lady like seduced him? And like, does the movie need that? Is that like something that is essential to what this like movie is doing or about?
Beyond cyborgic blowjobs, like the thing that made the Borg scary was that they had no leadership. The thing that made them truly a threat was their, you know, like collective reasoning. And the second you have the Borg Queen exist, it throws all of that hard work out the window. So like it's I have deep thoughts about First Contact.
I mean, again, not to get into it, as you know, a big Star Trek First Contact fan, I agree. By the way, that the Borg are one of those villains that enter terminal decline almost immediately.
Yeah,
I think you're being generous to say that it's like First Contact that really starts it. I think you can place it earlier. I think you can place it at Descent, which is the season finale bridging the 6th and 7th seasons of the Next Generation. But like you could arguably say like the Borg Queen is rooted in the Best of Both Worlds, like the Best of Both Worlds, which is one of the best episodes of Star Trek ever made. But that is the second appearance of the Borg, not counting a cameo in Evolution. And what that does is it's like, what if we give the Borg a single unifying voice? It just happens to be Picard this time. Because like it is one of those things where as a writer and as an audience, you understand it is very difficult to make a gigantic faceless collective like a compelling villain in its own right, where the urge is always to break them down and to make them individuals. Even in Next Generation, you have like you know, Iborg, the character of you, where like the impulse is always going to be to introduce individual Borgs with individual characters. And it's like, yeah, that doesn't work. That is the exact opposite of what makes the Borg interesting. But it's also, you understand that it's like, it's also one of the only ways to write a compelling narrative, like to write a functional blockbuster narrative with these enemies. It's very hard to, like the Borg are such a fascinating concept because they work once. It's like one of those things where it's like, you can use it once and then you have to throw it away. Like, because once you beat the Borg are no longer unbeatable. That's the thing. Like when the Borg appear in Q Who, they are an existential threat. Like the Enterprise loses. You have that wonderful, like, take a corkscrew section of the Enterprise out of the hull. 18 crew members die, and Picard literally only survives because of a literal Deus Ex Machina, which is baked into the plot of going, please Q, take me away from these big bad Borg people. And Q is like, well, since you asked nicely, I guess I will. But like, once you beat the Borg, which is what you have to do in the Best of Both Worlds, it's like you just throw the Borg away as a concept. You if you want the Borg to remain as they are, you have to just never use them again. Because once you've beaten them, the threat's gone out. And that's the problem with Voyager, is that like the Borg encounter Voyager like twice a year, from like the 3rd season through the finale. And every episode, Voyager, this one lone, isolated Federation science ship, which with half of its crew dead, half of its crew terrorists, they somehow every single time manage to beat the Borg.
Okay,
And it's
what if we make a bad guy that even is badder than the Borg? How about that?
welcome to Scorpion, the third season finale of Star Trek.
I know.
And immediately it's like, but Voyager beats them too. So
Yep.
you're like, again, I say this, like, there are episodes of Voyager that I love, but it's very clearly limited by we have 45 minutes, and at the end of 45 minutes, there has to be a happily ever after ending. Like, we can't have the characters lose consistently because that's a
Right.
bit of a downer. So, like,
Right, then you're just doing The Walking Dead.
yeah, like you do the like you get to the species 8472, which are the badder than the Borg villains introduced in Scorpion, and within a season and a half in the episode, like in the flesh, they're wearing human skin, cosplaying as Starfleet officers, and they're not so different from you and I. And it's like, no, the entire point of species 8472 is they come from a different universe where they are fundamentally different from you and I.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Sorry, welcome to Darren Rants About Voyager.
That's literally, this is the entire premise of this episode. We are here for it. Mr. Tickertron gave us some Ko-Fi donations. My favorite Aussies, the lads over at the Weekly Planet, mentioned you guys in last week's episode. It would be cool if you guys collabed sometimes. The comic book conversations could last for days.
Wow, we got to share that. That's nice.
We
really
always
cool.
appreciate a shout out.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, to have them reach out, talk to them, have their people talk to our people. Our people is Nick.
Do we have people? I was gonna say, do we have people? I don't know.
It's just
we have
Nick.
people. We have friends everywhere, Jack. Oh, you haven't seen Andor, so you don't get that reference.
Oh, nope, I don't, and I'm happy about
I love,
it.
by the way, that we've had this like Star Trek conversation, and at no point have I ever been, Jack, you should try a new Star Trek show. Because everybody's like, you should try Andor. You should definitely try Andor.
Honestly, by the way, that is shockingly true. Is no one has ever said to me, okay, listen, Brave. Well, you know, people, Lower Decks has been pitched as like it's fun, you know.
I really like Lower Decks. In fact, I love like Lower Decks. The third season of Lower Decks is incredible. I would not recommend that to you, Jack.
But yeah, universally, everyone agrees Andor is great. I'm still not going to watch it, and I'm okay with that. Veldram, YouTube super chat. Been waiting for this live stream for a while. Would love some opinions about Star Trek Voyager. You just got a bucket load.
Again, such a limit case for Star. Like, that's the thing, is where like Star Trek Voyager on paper. Again, this is Pillar, and to his credit, like Michael Pillar. We mentioned the third season of Star Trek: The Next Generation as being the point where The Next Generation gets good, and one of the reasons for that is because Pillar has brought in, famously, he's brought in, I think, I'm trying to remember who it's under, but basically they hire, might be Michael Wagner. They hire a new showrunner for the third season of Star Trek: The Next Generation. They meet, like, Pillar talks about meeting Berman for lunch, having conversation. Berman's like, great, you'll join the staff, you'll be working under Michael Wagner, it's gonna be great. And he talks about how 3 days later he gets a phone call from Berman being, by the way, Michael Wagner has resigned, you're now in charge of the writer's room. And Pillar's like, I had never done that before, I don't know anything about Star Trek, and I have to figure it out on the fly. And like, Pillar takes all of these like incredible big swings to get back to that discussion of like franchises and making franchises viable and like keeping franchises fresh and exciting. Pillar comes up with like new ways of writing Star Trek. He like crazy ideas, like maybe the episode should be built around a character, like, you know, insane nonsense like that. You'll notice, by the way, if you watch the show, it's very clear, like in the first couple of seasons, like it's the Picard, Data, and Riker show. And once you get to the third season, it's like, oh no, we understand what a Geordi episode is. We understand what a Troy episode is. And it becomes like a very clear, like rotating structure, which works very well because that ensemble is incredibly likable. But Pillar also does things like he recruits like writers, like we mentioned already, Ronald D. Moore, who I believe hands his script to a tour guide at Paramount. And Pillar like reads it and is like, the script's pretty good. You know what? We're having a bit of difficulty like getting writers to work on the show. Maybe we should just like open the gates and like have people send us scripts, and if they're good, we'll like rewrite them and put them on the show. And you have the open submission policy, which I believe was in place until Enterprise, possibly, but is like one of the like great foot in the door things. Where like, I think Renee Echevarria also like becomes a writer through that. I think Fuller becomes a writer through that, although Fuller may have got representation. Clink, I think maybe, although she may also have been an intern. But you have this kind of process of you can submit a script to us, and we will read the script, and if the script is good, We will obviously heavily rewrite that. And again, this is one of the reasons why people like Pillar or Melinda Snodgrass don't get as much credit as they deserve, or even Ira Bear, because like when you see a name on the credits of an episode of television, that is the person who wrote the original draft of the script. The script
Oh.
may have been and likely was heavily rewritten by the showrunner or the producer, the script editor, but you don't put your name on the episode as a rule. It's called credit jumping because that affects the residuals that the writer gets. Right. So the
Ah.
argument is that like if you say instead of being Renee Echevarria, it's Renee Echevarria and Michael Pillar, suddenly every dollar that like he would have got now has to be split halfway between you and him. And as a showrunner, that's seen as abusing your power because you can just use that to be like, every episode is half mine. Um, but like, so you have these episodes that are written by people who have never written TV before, and they're brought in, and Pillar kind of encourages them. And Pillar like pushes Star Trek in interesting directions. He like brings in, as we say, brings in Bear to do Deep Space Nine, and he's like, I want you to do radical stuff. I want you to do the stuff that you felt you couldn't do on Next Generation. You would come in and you would be in charge, and I would have your back. And with Voyager, like Pillar's like, actually, I like Deep Space Nine. I like what's working with Deep Space Nine. I want to do more of that. So here's the premise for like Voyager on paper. And it's like Starfleet ship thrown halfway across the galaxy. Half the crew is killed, all right? And half the crew then has to be made up with the Maquis, which are
Mm,
terrorists. So people
mhm.
who have like left Starfleet, people who have murdered people, and they have to find a way home, and they have to figure out what kind of ship they are, and they have to have like on paper, that is an incredible premise for a show. It's like a bunch of people in an incredibly dangerous situation having to work with people who they are fundamentally opposed to, and people who have rejected the norms of Starfleet and the Federation. Like Chakotay has washed out of Starfleet Academy, Torres have washed out of Starfleet Academy, and they object to like the structures and principles of Star Trek. And you have a conflict that is like the conflict between Kira and Cisco on Deep Space Nine, but bigger and more
Yeah.
exponentially, like yeah,
Yeah.
right on paper. And then almost immediately on like Star Trek Voyager, they're like,
Mhm.
what if all these rebels are now in Starfleet uniforms, following Starfleet rules, have Starfleet ranks, and nobody has any disagreement or any conflict whatsoever? Also, I know that they're stranded on the opposite side of the galaxy with limited resources, but the holodecks are on all the time. And it's like, then what is the point of this? What is the point of this premise if you're just going to do the Next Generation 2.0?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the problem with Voyager. There are some phenomenal Voyager episodes. There
Yes,
are
yeah,
some really wonderful Voyager episodes, but it is so inconsistent, not just season to season, episode to episode.
yeah.
Um, there's another Voyager thing that we'll talk about later about
You make it sound like a
possible
threat.
what I will put out there is quite possibly the worst Star Trek episode ever, bar none.
It's
And
I
it's
know
a
it's
Voyager
Chakotay
one.
episode, but it's like, which Chakotay episode is it? It's like,
You know exactly.
like, all of the boxes contain Chakotay episodes. Yeah.
So we'll get there. Sino's the Hedgehog. Anything positive on the J.J. Abrams reboot films? I really liked the first one. I thought that was a really fun, light Star Trek movie. And I know it's not his, but I really liked Beyond as well. Beyond was really fun.
I like the first. Ironically enough, I like the first two, but not the third one. I think the third one's. I think Beyond is fine. Like the
Yeah.
thing about Beyond is Beyond has that feel of like a lot of like Kurtzman era Star Trek, which is like, you like Star Trek, don't you? This is the most Star Trek that ever Star Trek, and I'm like, I
Yeah.
do. You know what I liked about Star Trek? That it went to strange new worlds and did new things and like explored. And it's like, no, what you liked about Star Trek was it's just a bunch of stuff that you recognize was very Star Trekky. I am very fond of like the first two Abrams movies. I'm actually shockingly incredibly fond of like Into Darkness. I think like
Really?
obviously, yeah, Into Darkness obviously it has the big central John Harrison problem at the center of it, but I don't know who you're possibly referring to. That could be any character.
Could be anyone.
Um,
Yeah.
but I do think that it is like it's what I like about Star Trek is Star Trek doing this thing of like being a metaphor for American self-image and being a
Mm.
metaphor for like America's relationship with the larger world. Where like the 60s, like Kirk is like Kennedy. It's very obvious. And in like the in the 90s and like Next Generation is like America is the leader of a coalition of nations where we're all come together and we're all friends, and it's like, look at how international this crew is. It's even captained by a foreigner. He's got a French name and a British accent, so he counts as a foreign. Like he's generically foreign, but he's a
He's
representation.
European. Yes.
Yes, yeah. But it's like he's so French. You won't believe how French this Yorkshire man is. But it is this idea of like it's Clinton era kind of like internationalism and optimism and the belief that like you live in the unipolar moment, the end of history. Like the world is just going to be perfect. Like it's like
Mhm.
we have reached a point in history where everything is golden, the economy is booming, the world from a Western perspective is relatively stable, and we're riding that wave, right? And then you get into Voyager, where Voyager is like weirdly like, you know what, this is going to end at some point, right? It's like this period of like peace and prosperity is going to be like, it can't last forever. It's going to get really bad really soon, right?
Eventually, we're all fucked, right?
Yeah, and then you get to like Enterprise, which is the we're all it's like the post 9/11 Star Trek, where like they quite literally like have the Archer, who is the son of the inventor of warp drive, who never got the credit that he deserved. Jack,
There we
his
go.
father,
Of course.
Archer Sr., never got the credit that he deserved from those pesky Vulcans. So his son, Archer Jr., he's going to lead this coalition of the willing. I mean, he's going to lead this federation forward to accomplish what his father never could. It is so like fascinatingly the American psyche rendered on screen. And what I love about Into Darkness is for me, I'm going to put my hands up and say for me, I accept that like this is a Darren take. I'm not insisting this is objective reality. But it is for me one of the quintessential late Obama era movies, where like the original the 2009 Star Trek is to me like one of those great early Obama era movies where like there's this transition between say The Dark Knight in 2008, which is a late Bush era movie, where it's like we're all fucked. We're all ruined. Everybody's watching us. There's no security, no safety. Terrorists could come for us at any time, and we will betray our moral principles in order to retain some fiction that we exist in a shared society of shared values that will survive whatever threat is lurking in the darkness for us. Like The Dark Knight is like the most cynical Bush era movie where like the idea of exceptionalism is built on a lie. It's a lie that we tell ourselves, and we can heap this all on some fantastical construct we call America. Whereas then you get to like the Avengers and like the J.J. Abrams Star Trek movie, which is like, fuck yeah, Obama era, baby. Everything's primary color. It's like the 60s again. Primary colors are back. America, fuck yeah. Everything is going golden. It's like we went through a bit of a rough patch earlier on. We don't talk about Enterprise that much, but it's like, yeah, we're going to get the band together. We're going to go cool space adventures, and everybody's going to hang out and have fun. And it'll just be like it was back in the day. And for me, like the thing about Star Trek Into Darkness is that it is like 4 years later, or 4 years later, it's a second term Obama movie, which is like, you know what? That didn't really work out the way that we expected it to. Yeah, we were kind of thinking that we were going on like a bright, futuristic, optimistic, like things are gonna be great, but it turns out like, yeah, no, Guantanamo Bay is still open. We've actually increased the number of drone strikes that we're doing. We're arguably even more invested in wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. Turns out that maybe the military-industrial complex hasn't been magically dismantled. Also, we gave a bunch of money to bankers after they nearly crippled our economy. And turns out that the entire like golden dawn that we were promised in 2008 never really materialized. So what you gonna do about that? Which I find really fascinating. For me, that is the heart of like Into Darkness. Is like it's Kirk and Spock being like, we were promised that we were going to be like a bold, new, utopian, idealist 1960s Star Trek, and instead we got War on Terror 2.0. And it is like that for me is maybe it doesn't entirely work, but for me it's like it's a big bold swing, and it's like one of the last times allowing for the first season Discovery that like the Star Trek franchise does something that bold, where it's like we're going to actually use this to make a comment on like contemporary American politics, contemporary American culture, contemporary American society. Sorry, that's my random rant.
That an amazing random rant. And you know, we all come from different places, and I love that. Looking at the film through that lens, I agree is a fun lens to look through. I still don't like the movie very much, and that's okay.
That's fair.
Charno Zaim, thank you for the super chat. Can't watch the stream, so here is €5 for Darren playing 12 minutes stream. I like Darren too much. I just like Darren too much.
I know.
We'll see.
I don't want Willem Dafoe. I want Willem Friend.
I want you like because I've had to play it and I know what the story is. I would love someone to wallow in that misery with me.
Okay.
But
Is the Willem Dafoe character a figment of your imagination? I'm like, I've been because I haven't read spoilers, but you guys have been like, it's been percolating in my head. So like, is the Willem Dafoe character a ghost? Is the Willem Dafoe character an alternate personality of my character? Is the like I'm running through the hack cliche lists of possibilities.
I don't think you'll get there. I don't
Okay,
think
all right,
you'll
all right.
get there, and you'll
Is
still
Willem
be
Dafoe a time displaced future version of me that has been sent back in time to prevent me from becoming future Hitler?
oh, maybe, right? Who knows? We'll see. We'll see. We'll talk to Darren. We'll give Darren as much information as we feel is comfortable, and we'll make that decision later.
Next time everybody's in the next time everybody's recording Adventures 9 and there's a light week and you need somebody to fill in.
No, because we want to be there. We want to be there with you. One,
Oh,
to see your reaction, but then also to console you.
I remember was it the GoldenEye stream we had with Marty while you guys were recording the previous Adventures 9,
Yeah,
and I remember like getting messages from KC being like, "We're watching this and it is fucking awesome."
it was great. We were laughing our asses off at you schooling Marty and Goldeneye. All right, let's see here. Snake in the Garden says fave character Adventures 9 Mortimer was based on Garrick. That's right, Mortimer from Adventures 9, who plays someone a little fast and loose with truth and lie. Yahtzee has said that he is definitely based on Garrick from Deep Space Nine. Look at that! Look at that smiling Garrick.
And again, like Garrick, one of those characters who just kind of grows, where he I think appears only in one episode of the first season,
Mhm.
and then like becomes this like there was a point I think around about the sixth season where they're like, can we add you as a series regular? And he's like, I actually turned that down because I felt like Garrick in every episode would like diminish the charm of Garrick.
Yeah, yeah.
But like he's such an incredible character, and like you've seen the second season, you've seen The Wire. The Wire is the one where
Yes.
he has the implant in his head and
Yes.
Bashir has to cure him, and you have this like it's this incredible like non-backstory episode for Garrick, where Garrick like offers these like 4 or 5 different sub-story accounts of like how he came to be exiled from Cardassia, and he's like, they're all lies, but also they're all true. They're all lies? They're all true, especially the lies.
Yeah, and Garrick, by the way, is a wonderful character. Thinking of series regulars, I mean, I'm a sucker for Quark, just because I do want to see the shenanigans. Also though, Odo, I think is possibly the most interesting character. Like I think it's season 1. We get him with Yaxana Troy, and just like so horned up for him, and he's like, I don't want to touch other people, and I empathize with that.
And I turn
So,
into a pool of goo in your lap in a none too subtle metaphor.
once
Like,
once I trust you, I will turn into a pool of goo in front of you.
I mean,
Absolutely.
the thing about Odo, which is so incredible, is like, and again, shout out to I apologize, I think it's Rene Auberjonois who played him.
Mm.
Who's like, again, he's a '70s character. I feel like a Robert Altman regular, which is kind of incredible. But like the thing about Odo, which I love, is that he is, despite the fact he's a 50-year-old man in the show, he is also a teenager because the nature of that character is that he was a pool of sentient slime that eventually morphed into a human being, and he's
Mm.
only existed for about what 16, 17 years, but he looks like a 40-year-old or 50-year-old man because he's modeled on the man who discovered him, Dr. Mora. So you
Mm.
have this, like, it's an incredible performance because Auberjonois is a 50-year-old man, and Odo is very clearly like somebody who has modeled his personality on being a grumpy old man. But if you look at how his character acts over the course of the show, he is very clearly a teenage boy in terms of like his emotional intelligence.
Mhm.
It's an incredible performance. It's an incredible role. I love that character so much.
Yeah. Yeah. Odo is great. All right, so now we're getting back to slight Voyager talk, which is Sir John Arbuckle says, name the dumbest moments in Trek, like Chakotay boxing.
Again, that's the fight. That's the 5th season episode where this is like the pillar has left. So Michael Piller was big in Chakotay. Michael Piller was like, I'm all in on Chakotay. The problem is Michael Piller was a 1990s California liberal who had like very into like Native American culture. So like Chakotay is like generically Native American. I don't believe they ever mentioned the name of his tribe on the show. And in the first couple of seasons, every Chakotay episode is about how Chakotay is a super special, magical Native American person who could do things like take his crewmates on like vision quests, like it's a party trick. Like there's an entire like first episode where he's just like, "Come sit down and have a fantasy vision with me because I'm a magical Native American person." The Pillar writes Tattoo, which is like my pick for the dumbest Star Trek episode, which is the one where like Pillar reveals that like Native American culture in general, like not specifically a tribe, to be clear, which is probably less offensive, I guess, that it's generic, but it's like that the entirety of Chakotay's heritage comes from magic space aliens who, by the way, are literally white. They're like painted white. They're not like pink like us, but they're literally like body painted white. And it's like, it is the most like patronizing ancient astronauts. White people really understand native culture subtext. But once Pillar leaves, and obviously like Pillar drives other plots like the Cisco plot, which is Pillar driven, which involves like Chakotay's young child, who he has with the traitor Cisco and stuff like that. And, you know, I think Taylor pushes the idea of Chakotay as a love interest for Janeway in episodes like, remember the late second season episode where they live on a planet together, which is like fan fiction, which is lovely. Where it's the one where they both have like a mysterious space illness, which requires them to like build a log cabin on an alien planet.
Not to be
together.
confused when Janeway and Paris turn into space lizards and fuck.
I'm just like,
That's a different,
and also first two seasons of Voyager, a lot of abandoned offspring. Like there's a lot of like they're really fucking their way through the quadrant where like Chakotay's like child ends up being like taken away by the Kazon. Those little salamanders are wandering around on some little world, never knowing their mummy and daddy.
Right.
But like, so as soon as like Taylor leaves and as soon as Pillar leaves, they have no idea what to do with Chakotay, and Chakotay just becomes the go-to for any random plot idea we have. And like there is a fun thing when you're watching Voyager's later seasons to like pick up Chakotay's like habits and hobbies, where like every episode Chakotay's in, he will have a new hobby that he will insist he's loved forever. Like it's like everybody in the crew knows that I'm big into the history of Mars missions, and it's like, really? That's never come up before. Everybody on the crew knows I love boxing. It's my whole
I've always loved boxing, been fascinated by it.
It's my whole thing. My whole
the
shtick.
Boxing episode is what I would put on there as definitively the worst episode of Star Trek.
Ooh, interesting.
It was like because I can even love a bad episode of television, but that seemed to be worth less. It like it took away goodwill.
But again, that's a clear, like we talked about that earlier on, where it's like we have no idea what to do with Chakotay as a character, so let's just stick him in a boxing episode. That's interesting. If I were to pick up, like, I would probably, and I should list some great episodes of Voyager after this just to balance it out. But if I were picking like worst episodes of Star Trek, it would probably Voyager are the one that come to mind. Where like I think of like Alliances, which is the second season episode with the Kazon, where like Voyager is like, you know, it's the one where Pillar's like, look, we need to do some arc building. We need to build an arc. We need to have like forward momentum on the show. We need to have like character arcs and plot arcs, and we need to show like Voyager like becoming part of the texture of the Delta Quadrant. The only problem is that script is assigned to Jerry Taylor. It's like, fuck no, I don't want to fucking do that. So the entire premise of Alliances is what if Voyager forms an alliance with the Kazon, who are the recurring villains of the show. And you could just tell that Taylor's like, this is a stupid idea. I don't like this. Is a stupid idea in the script that I'm writing. Look at how stupid this script is I'm writing. And like the plot of that episode is Janeway meets the Trabe. The Trabe are, and stop me when this metaphor starts to sound familiar, the Kazon are a bunch of young men who gallivant around the Delta Quadrant causing untold violence and destruction. They were, in the original pitch documents for Star Trek Voyager, referred to as the Bloods and the Crips, in case you don't get what the subtext of this is. They have rocks in their hair and dark skin, and yeah, in case you don't get the subtext of what this is about. In Alliances, Janeway meets the Trabe. The Trabe are people who look very much like you and me, Jack. Not like the Kazon, but like you and me. And it turns out that the Trabe were actually a culture that had kept the Kazon as slaves for hundreds and hundreds of years. And Janeway's immediate reaction on meeting the Trabe isn't, well, you guys got what you deserved, and I'm glad the Kazon are finally free of your influence. Janeway's response is, you guys rock. You guys seem like my kind of people. We can sit down and like have a glass of champagne with you guys. We can't do that with the Kazon. The Kazon don't really think. I mean, sounds to me like the Delta Quadrant was a lot better when you guys were in charge. And you're just watching it going, What? No, 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 no. And the episode does build, to be fair, build to the twist that the Trabe are also bad. But it's
Yeah.
like, so much of the episode is Janeway being like waylaid by well, they talk good. They read Atlantic articles. And they share our
That's
opinions.
classic. There's Janeway A and Janeway B. That's classic Janeway B bullshit. Like, if
I
that
think
was
there's like
leaked,
Janeway C through F as well.
thinking of Deep Space Nine, I had to look through to find the episode name. Midway through season 2 is Rivals.
Oh yeah, Chris Sarandon. Yes, though that
And
was meant to be, I believe, a Whoopi Goldberg cameo, if I remember correctly.
hilarious. So Rivals is about like a fellow con artist who is trying to con most of Deep Space Nine and comes across a magical device that quite literally changes probability, not just for the user but for the space station in general. And they try to hand wave it off as like it's a change in neutrino flow or some bullshit. It's a very silly episode, and it also has like extreme racquetball where we're dealing
Yes.
with Chief O'Brien aging and not being happy about it.
I will say I love the Bashir and O'Brien friendship over the course of the show. I mean, like if we're talking about like Deep Space Nine, there are a couple of, sorry to spoil what is coming up for you, Jack. There are a couple of third season episodes of Deep Space Nine that are certainly in the conversation. I'm thinking of like a Meridian, which I already mentioned is like Brigadoon, but also
Mhm.
deep fake porn. And I'm like,
Yep.
no, one of those in an episode would be enough, not together. But you also have like the Distant Voices, which is the Bashir centric episode that season, which is what if we just bury Alexander Siddig on. You know how Alexander Siddig is like the most young member of the cast and he has a really great physicality and energy? What if we just bury him under mountains of makeup and he learns nothing? There is no point to it whatsoever. So yeah, those would also be in contention for me.
Oh Lord. Well, and just remember, everybody, it's okay to have a bad episode. It's part of the learning process.
Yeah. I'm going to
Snake.
shout out, sorry, Counterpoint, like in terms of like good Voyager episodes, Counterpoint is incredible. Counterpoint is one of the best episodes of Star Trek ever written. Latent Image is also very good. Gravity is phenomenal. Gravity is the one where Tuvok falls in love with Tank Girl.
Gravity's great.
Yeah.
What is Counterpoint? What are it's
Janeway
there, there's a
Janeway
two
falls in love.
episode. Oh,
Janeway
go ahead.
falls in love with so there's they're traveling through alien space, and
Mhm.
Janeway is like, there's this alien, they're basically traveling through Nazi space and they're smuggling Jews in the cargo hold, basically, is the plot of it. And it turns out that like one of the commanders of the alien ship like is like, I'm defecting. I can't be a Nazi anymore. It's just getting to me. And he like
Great.
sneaks on board and he's like, okay, I'm gonna help you guys sneak these space Jewish people through Nazi territory. And as it's going on, like he and Janeway kind of have a romance, and like it's really beautiful and it's really like strangely effective. It's really moving. And like the course of the tension of the episode is can he trust Janeway? Can she trust him? Is he faking it? Is this secure? Like, and you have this kind of push and pull, but it works because it gives Mulgrew things to do. Where like you mentioned Janeway A and Janeway B. Mulgrew I think is great. Like Mulgrew is really good and really compelling to watch. But when you
Yeah.
give her meat to chew on, she's incredible. And you have this wonderful thing where we mentioned like Deep Space Nine being reluctant to give Cisco a romance for reasons to do with 90s television and audiences and black men and whatever. Voyager was also like somewhat skeptical about Janeway, where Janeway spends the first couple of seasons with a fiance at home. Who's like, I have a partner at home, so I don't need to worry about romance or anything like that, you know? And what's interesting about Counterpoint is the first time that you actually get to see like Janeway have a romance, and it's this really tense, really engaging thing. And it also has like a really great performance from, I wish I could remember the name of the actor as the captain, where they have like real chemistry, and it actually has like a really earned, satisfying, dramatic payoff to the plot. So I do want to shout out Counterpoint. That's
What is I want to say it's called like Year of Hell.
yes.
Which is like, oh, this is the show that I signed up to watch, which it's actually Voyager having to scrape by on little resources, having to struggle through the Delta Quadrant. And I want to say it was a two-parter.
Yeah.
A phenomenal, like that is the Voyager we all wanted to see for every single season.
And again, like, not to put too fine a point in it, like, that happens during the 4th season Voyager, which is around the 6th season Deep Space Nine, and both of
Mm.
those originate at a point where, like, the writers on those shows go, "We would like to do a season-long arc. We would like to do an
Yeah.
arc that takes place over the course of the season," and Deep
Mhm.
Space Nine just, like, does it. Deep Space Nine is just like, "Yeah, we're doing it," and it's like, "You gave us permission. It's done. It's too late. You can't put the genie back in the bottle." With Voyager, like, Braga's like, "Yeah, no, I wanna do an entire year of this. I want this to be the year." That's why it's called the Year of Hell, because I
Yeah.
want it to be a clear arc across the 4th season from beginning to end. And Berman's like, can you do it in 2 episodes? And Braga's like, I guess I can. George Kurtwood Smith is very good in that as Anorax.
Mm.
Yeah.
It's great. Great episode. All right. Snake in the Garden says a DS9 doc is the only Kickstarter I supported, and I adore my Garrick t-shirt. I got it with the movie print with Bear is framed in my kitchen. Love it.
Amazing. Love it so much.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Sussy Guru said I recently started rewatching Voyager and I feel it's better than I remember it being halfway through season 1, and my favorite so far is Emanations.
Emanations is the one where they're dead, right? That's the one where they die and they go to an alternate dimension where they're wrapped and mummified. It's a Kim episode. I think Chakotay is also
Oh.
central to it as well. Yeah, it's where they like swap places. It's where like there's an alien species that like sends the dead through a portal, and it ends up that like Kim is in the right place or the wrong place at the right time, so he gets like sucked back through the portal. So it's like a family are like, well, we sent our beloved deceased like relative through there, and we got Harry Kim out the other side. Um, I like trying to think. I do like in terms of the first season. I like Faces, which is very good. That's the Vidian. Like the Vidians are such a cool concept, and again, we don't have time to go full tilt into like Voyager here, but like
That's for when Marty takes his next vacation. We'll go full tilt into Voyager. Yeah.
like we'll work our way through it one at a time, and like get to the point where like Jack has to watch Discovery finally.
Also, did you see Eric being very subtle by putting how long we've been streaming up on the?
Oh, the clock has started. I think we can hit a third digit on that one. I think we.
I will have to stop us because eventually I have to pick up my kids from school. But we got time. We got time.
I do love the idea of like, sorry kids, Daddy's talking Deep Space Nine. But like, okay, to put a pin in it for the eventual Voyager episode, which we are now contractually bound to do. One of the things that's really interesting about Voyager is that, like, we mentioned the idea of like Deep Space, Next Generation being a product of like the 90s and the long 90s and the end of history and the unipolar moment. Voyager is like very much like the flip side of that, where it's like, man, it really sucks to be the first world. Like, it is such a burden for us to be America when we have to deal with like the rest of the world, where like so much throughout Voyager, there's this recurring emphasis on like fascist dictatorships, failed states, like collapsing like unions, where like the Borg in Voyager have kind of collapsed in unity into like this fractured sense, and it's like that is Russia. It's like post Cold War Russia, and you can read the Kazon. They are a metaphor for gangs, but they're also very obviously there's a lot of people over there who don't have our values and are very different from us, and the Vidians are like very obviously, well, look. They're literally called the Vidians. They have a contagious, infectious illness that contaminates us and is kind of like physically disgusting and unsettling. It is very obviously like rooted in a late 90s fear of like, oh yeah, there's a whole bunch of icky stuff we don't want to talk about. But the Vidian episodes are generally quite good, I will say. And I think that like Faces, which is the one where they split B'Elanna Torres in two in the classic Star Trek fashion, where there is a human B'Elanna and a Klingon B'Elanna, but there's also, and I want to shout this out, a Vidian doctor who decides he's going to seduce B'Elanna by harvesting the face of her co-worker and romancing her with it. And it is gorgeous. Like that is pure like Braga. That is like pure gonzo. Like Brannon Braga loves 1950s B movie Star Trek. And I'm kind of like, I like that a lot.
Oh, great. Let's see here. Clistorius. Hopefully I'm saying that correct.
Careful. I love how careful you were getting to that one.
I am dyslexic, and I did think that said something else. Said, hey guys, not Star Trek, but Orville, yay, nay.
I have not watched enough to comment. I watched the bit of the first season, and it was not for me, which...
That's that's exactly me. I tried getting into it. I do hear that eventually it does kind of hit its stride. And from what I've heard, it is kind of if you are
Star Trek.
looking for next gen, it
Yeah.
is
It's
the
very obviously
yeah.
like a love letter to it. Like, and again,
Yeah.
like Seth MacFarlane, like this is the thing about MacFarlane. I know it's very popular to rag on MacFarlane for like the empire that he's built, but he's a guy who loves the stuff that he loves, and the stuff that he loves is incredibly nerdy, where it's like Frank Sinatra big band music. It's like I'm gonna record an entire album of that. And like Star Trek, where it's like, I'll make my own Star Trek. Where it's
Yep.
like I kind of like that. I like that he's like, this is the stuff that interests me. And it I will say, as somebody who watched the first 5 or 6 episodes of the show, the thing about the Orville that was the weakest part of it was the sitcom aspect. The part that was
Yes.
most interesting was like MacFarlane being like, I just want to make a Star Trek show. And I
Mhm.
kind of like that. I respect that even if it didn't work for me.
Oh yeah, and from what I hear is in later seasons he did finally pull that lever, and it's like, guess what? It's just Star Trek now. But first impressions are meaningful. Sovereign, thanks for the super chat. Fun Star Trek fact: Star Trek Lower Decks straight up says that holodeck usage is indeed mostly kinky stuff, complete with its own built-in redacted filter.
Oh, they have like disposing of the holodeck waste, which is treated like toxic waste. I mean, there was obviously Mike McMahon, who began as like the like Star Trek Next Generation season 8 Twitter account, which is just great.
Mhm.
But like there is the joke on, is it something, no, not something off, maybe it's Cracked, where it's like the worst job on the Enterprise is being the janitor who has to clean the holodeck after Riker's been in there. And it's like, yeah, no, I can believe that.
100%. There is so much sex stuff happening in there, but they also have sonic showers, so hopefully that cleaning is automated. Let's see here. For looming, I was going to ask for your movie ideas, but since Marty isn't here, I'll wait. Instead, I'll just say Voyager and Janeway are my favorite.
Oh. And again, I worry if I've been mean about Voyager. I do like. There's a lot of Voyager I love. I want to say the 4th season of Voyager is honestly legitimately great. There's a really great run of episodes. You mentioned like Year of Hell. I think it goes up until about the Killing Game, where like there's just this really strong run of episodes, which is just
Mhm.
phenomenal. Like the Killing Game is also incredible, where it's like they have. You mentioned things they do on the holodeck, where they like cosplay World War II on the holodeck. And you like build the finale of like the Klingons storming a French village, and I'm like,
Mhm.
yeah, this is exactly kind of, this is the
Yeah,
right level for what you're trying to do on Voyager.
that's why Darren and I believe, hopefully agree on this. The reason
Yeah.
why we get very passionate about Voyager is because there are really good episodes, and there is a really good, solid premise in there that they do sometimes, and so it makes it extra frustrating when they don't do it.
Yeah, like that's the thing. It's like I because again, for my sins, and you can go find them, they're probably very embarrassing. I wrote reviews of every episode of like Star Trek, the original series, Star Trek Deep Space Nine, Star Trek Voyager, Star Trek Enterprise. And I will say, like, I was never more frustrated than doing Voyager, because like
Mhm,
once in every couple of episodes there'd be like a masterpiece, like an
mhm.
honest to God masterpiece. And in many cases, like a masterpiece that is unheralded. Like I love what's the one? Concerning Flight. Like Concerning Flight, which is just a Doctor Who episode where Janeway is companion and Leonardo da Vinci is the Doctor. Where it's like
Sure.
she has to beam down to a planet and rescue John Rhys Davies as a holographic Vincent, like obviously Da Vinci. Where, as the title implies, the climax of the episode is they build a flying machine together, and I'm like, this is gold. Like this is just
Yes.
perfect. Like fluff throwaway. You'd never get away with it today in your 8 episode seasons where everything has to be serious. Or like Child's Play, which is like just a really sweet episode about kind of about Voyager, where it's about this idea of a child who's been abandoned by his parents and turned into a weapon, and about this idea of like, do we have long form serialization? Where it's like, do we have a duty to continue this story that we have started telling to raise this child? So we have this child, Icheb, and we're sending him home because he belongs with his parents, except his parents have turned him into a weapon of mass destruction, and they're just going to like send him back to be assimilated. Do we have a duty of care? Do we have a moral obligation? And
Mhm.
does that mean that, do we have to accept that that means that we have to do long form serialization, which is the subtext of it, where it's like, do we love Icheb enough that we're willing to do long form serialization to keep him around? And the show is like, kind of have to. Like that's where it
Mhm.
lies. But so much good Voyager, but just so
Mhm.
much of Voyager that is just, we have the next generation at home.
Yes. Yeah. Thaldram says the whole episode about the Romulan incident made Cisco my favorite. So much depth was shown in that episode for me.
That's in the Pale Moonlight, which is maybe the best episode of Star Trek ever written. That
Oh.
is a great example of jumping credit, which is like it's credited to Michael Taylor, who gone to be one of the great Voyager episode writers. I think he's the guy who wrote Counterpoint. It was his
Oh.
first script. Ronald D. Moore has said like the one thing I regret on Star Trek is that my name is not on in the Pale Moonlight, because I like did a page one rewrite of that and I couldn't jump credit on it because that would be rude and it was Michael's
Mhm.
first script. But it's like I wish my name that was such a great like that is like a totemic work of like episodic television, and I wish I could say it was mine because it is to a certain extent mine. But it's just incredible. It is like,
Mhm.
and I remember watching it when it like aired and it being groundbreaking. Without getting too into specifics, because that whole episode is ahead of you. That whole like arc is ahead of you. Like what that episode does and how that episode ends and what that does for Cisco as a character. I remember watching that as, I'm guessing, a 12-year-old kid, and just my jaw being on the floor because I didn't realize Star Trek could do that. I didn't realize that you could do a Star Trek episode where that happens,
Yeah.
and they wouldn't like arrive and lock you away, like where they wouldn't like the police wouldn't show up and say you don't get to write Star Trek anymore after you do that. It was incredible, and I want to shout out like there's another episode around the same time which is Far Beyond the Stars, which
Mm.
is just like a stunning piece of television, which again is nothing Star Trek had ever done before. And I was like, more of this. I want more of this. Like
Yeah.
you should every 10th or 20th episode of Star Trek should be Star Trek I've never seen before. And it's like that's the thing that I miss. I miss Star Trek I've never seen before.
Ooh. Ooh, what a
Good call, Eric, by the way.
what
Good
a
good.
glorious and tragic line. Darren. Meredith D says, fun fact is Siddig was addicted to MMOs during DS9.
Yes, he was also married briefly to Nana Visitor in a relationship that did not last very long,
Mm.
in part because of his addiction to video games. Um,
Wow.
yeah, he's talked about it. He's talked about like how, and again, like they're still friends, they all get along and stuff like that. But he said, yeah, that was the big thing with that relationship was I was not able to handle it. I, you mentioned favorite characters early on. Bashir is this is my nerdy, embarrassing admission. Bashir is kind of my favorite Deep Space Nine character.
Really?
Yeah, it's a little, but
Based on season 1 and season 2, I have nothing but shame for you, but I assume he gets better.
yeah, because I'm you know me, Jack. I'm nothing but a horn dog. I'm constantly thinking about how much I want a horn dog things. No, the thing that I love about Bashir is that like Bashir is like they figure out the concept of Bashir again round about the third or fourth season, and the concept of Bashir, which is such a golden premise, is he is the next generation character.
Mhm.
He is like even though obviously like Worf and O'Brien both began on the next generation, like you could take Bashir and just drop him into the cast the next generation and he would work perfectly fine. Like he would fill the role of like Crusher on that show perfectly fine. There'd be no
Yeah.
issues. You could take it, you could drop him into Voyager, he could do the EMH role, there'd be no problems. There is no other character on like Deep Space Nine that would work that way. If you take Deep Space Nine Worf and drop him onto Next Generation, like somebody is going to be dead by the end of the season. If you take like O'Brien and drop O'Brien as he is on Deep Space Nine, drop him into like into Next Generation, that show completely changes. It becomes more working class by default. But Bashir is this like really idyllic, naive, kind of hopeful character.
Mhm.
And he is the stock Star Trek character. And when you put him in a show that is so fundamentally different from a conventional Star Trek structure, that ends up being like his unique selling point, where he is like the one guy on the staff who'd be like, I actually, this Picard guy, I like Picard. He's got some good ideas. And so much of like where the show goes comes from like generating tension with that, where like his relationship with Garak is that like Garak is an incredible cynical character who has
Mhm.
obviously done terrible things and doesn't believe in any like moral guiding principle beyond power as an end unto itself. And you pair him with Bashir, who believes people are fundamentally decent. Or like his occasional conflict with Cisco, where Cisco will have to compromise or do something amoral, and Bashir will be like, but that's not Starfleet code. And Cisco's like, well, shut the fuck up, Bashir. It's like, get back in your corner. You're the doctor. Remember your role here. Like, it's our man Bashir, which is on paper, the throwaway James Bond pastiche episode, which should be the most disposable episode of like Star Trek ever made. It's just like GoldenEye is coming out in a couple of years, and we think that like audiences would like to see Star Trek do James Bond, and Bashir's going to be James Bond. But the heart of that episode is that like while you have like Cisco doing Dr. Noah, which I do quite like, But you have like Avery Brooks going full ham. You have a threat to like drill into the surface of the earth. What's it like? As you drill into the surface of the earth, the surface will shrink and the oceans will rise, like letting the air out of a balloon. And I'm like, I don't know that science works that way, but I admire your principles. But
Definitely not how it works.
as much as that episode is like a spoofy, loving pastiche of like 60s Bond movies, the heart of that episode ends up being this really moral moment where like they're in the holodeck. They have to keep the holodeck program running. If they turn the holodeck program off, all the characters in there will die. So all the main cast, Cisco, Dax, Kira, O'Brien, etc. Right? And so at one point, after they've nearly been murdered, Garrick is like, you know what? Fuck this shit. I am out of here. I am making a judgment call. Like you're a man who dreams about being a spy because you fantasize about making the hard decisions because you know deep down that you can't. Well, I can, and that's why I'm going to end the program. And you have this incredible moment where like he's about to say, computer, end, and Bashir just pulls the gun and shoots him. To stop him from giving the command. And it is an incredible moment because it is like Bashir deciding that he can save everybody. It's Bashir having like the Star Trek moment of, actually, this is a false choice. We don't have to make the tough choice. Like, one of the central arcs of that episode is that the way the Bond movie ends, there are the two women. There's Kira and there's Dax. Kira is the sexy Russian lady, and Dax is like the hot scientist who has to be seduced. Perfect. And the way that the Bond stories end is that one of those two women has to die, and the other woman is the woman that Bashir ends up with at the end.
Yeah.
And like, the premise of the episode is to a certain extent which of the two lives is Bashir going to have to choose, because he's going to have to choose one of them. Mm-hmm. And Bashir's like has the most fundamentally Star Trek idea ever, which is, I can save everybody. I can tell a version of this story, this high stakes story about tough moral choices where everybody makes it out alive at the end. And Garrick's like, no, you can't. That's not how the world works. That's not how like this story works. And Bashir, slight spoiler for the episode, because like Dax and Kira are series regulars, Bashir pulls it off. And it's like, that for me is like why I love that character so much, is he's put in this situation where he's dropped into a show that is in some ways, as we mentioned, at odds with the narrative logic of Star Trek The Next Generation, where it is a little grittier, it is a little darker, it is a little edgier. But throughout the show, Bashir consistently sticks to his principles. And sometimes that doesn't work. Spoilers for some episodes. But sometimes it does. And it feels like when it does work, it's incredible because it's earned. Because it's not like The Next Generation, where you know every time in The Next Generation Picard is going to be right. As you said, like Picard is going to solve the unsolvable problem that is
no matter what the impossible moral puzzle. Picard solved it. He fixed it somehow.
Crafted in 45 minutes. It's like, yeah, and there's time for like a scene where Data paints nudes or something. But like with Bashir, sometimes it doesn't work, but sometimes it does. And like that for me is the essence of Deep Space Nine. Like there's the Quickening is another episode in the 4th season where like there's the moment where like he's convinced that he can cure an alien population that has this incredible incurable disease that has ravaged them for generations. And he's like, he has this moment with Dax where he's like, you know, I was arrogant and selfish to assume that like they've had hundreds of years of doctors thinking they can do this, and I thought I could solve this in a day. And Dax is like, maybe you were arrogant to think that, but it's even more arrogant to think that just because you can't, nobody can. And it's just, again, I love Bashir. Bashir forever. That's Darren's Deep Space Nine character.
Bashir forever. Love it. Yes. Snake in the Garden says, DS9 walked so Expanse could run, female characters.
I mean, yeah, Deep Space Nine, I love Deep Space Nine a lot. You've only seen the 2nd season, right?
Right.
So you've only seen one Mirror Universe episode, and it's a very good Mirror Universe episode, Crossover.
Oh, yeah.
The one where Kira's sexy. The one where they're like, what if Nana Visitor was sexy? And I'm like, no, teenage Darren's brain cannot like handle this. It's like, we were already at like, Darren was barely handling on. It's like, yeah, but what if she wiggles her hips? And I'm like, no.
Oh, God.
I think, like, and again, Nana Visitors talked about this, where like the character of the Intendant is just a walk, where it's like, it's the same catsuit. It's just as tight as Kira's catsuit. All I do is just swing my hips a little bit more.
Oh, it feels tighter. Yeah.
But like, again, Deep Space Nine generally quite good with female characters, but you get to like the Mirror Universe episodes where it's like, what if there were sexy space lesbians? And I'm like,
Mhm.
this is such a product of its time. What if we go to the evil universe where everybody is a bisexual pirate? And I'm like, oh, you mean they're going to be gay guys? Like, no, 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 no.
No,
We don't want
just
to see
women.
guys. Yeah, just women.
Just women. That's how it works. Tommy Salty says, remember Tuvok's do-rag? 250 Star Trek episodes. Heart.
Yeah, we do the Star Trek movies. Every time myself and Andrew have like a gap in the schedule or a guest drops out or we have to fill a gap, we will do
Yeah.
a Star Trek movie of some kind because it's just something we can talk about minimum research. Want to shout out the Tuvok do-rag is from Future's End, which is like again, we've been mean about Voyager. Future's End is incredible. I love Future's End so much. That's the one with evil Ed Begley Jr.
Yes.
Where they travel back in
Yes.
time. Sarah Silverman's in it as well. And it
Mhm.
is this incredible love letter to Star Trek 4, to like the voyage home, where like the Voyager crew gets sent back in time to 1996. And again, it's typical of all the problems with Star Trek Voyager, where it's like they've been trying to get home to Earth for like 2.5 seasons at this point. Surely they could figure out a way to like stay near Earth, but just go into the future. And
Yeah.
it's like, no, we just wanted to send them back to Los Angeles in 1996 for some reason. But it is an incredibly fun two-part. I love that two-parter so much. It is like every character has something to do there. There is, I think, like it's a show, like the show is engaged with America for the first time, which is kind of incredible. Where I think is it Chakotay and B'Elanna end up captured by like conspiracy theorists
Oh,
who are
God, yeah.
work for the one world government or whatever, and you have like tech, like again a pre-2000s tech billionaire who's like, I know what's best for humanity. I'm
Who-
going to build a faster than light
Who
time
was
television.
caught stealing technology? Oh yeah, no, really fun story. Very fun story.
Like it's again, he's the 60s, isn't it? He's the teaser for the first episode is like it's Ed Begley Jr. with no attempt to disguise his age, wearing like a do-rag and with a bad wig on and glasses, and like the spaceship crashes in the plane. He walks over and says, far out, man. And then the
Yep.
Voyager credits. I'm like, I am so dialed into this.
And Tuvok, by the way, wearing a do-rag to cover up his Vulcan ears.
Yes,
By the way, that's classic Star Trek.
Yeah.
Nimoy did that all the time.
Yeah, Star Trek 4, he rips off the dressing gown and he kind of wraps around the head like a bandana.
Yes.
Or like City on the Edge of Forever, where he just wears a even indoors. Mechanical rice picking. That's what it was. It was a mechanical rice picking accident.
That's right. Sussy Guru 2000 says, with the Ferengi being stand-in for capitalism, one of my favorite moments in DS9 was between Cisco and Quark, where Quark tells Cisco directly that even the Ferengi were never as bad as humans were.
But that's the episode you just watched. That's the Jem'Hadar.
Yeah.
The Ferengi never did slavery. Like that's the thing about, and I really like that about Bear, is like Bear is like, so much of Star Trek The Next Generation is like humanity is perfect and humanity are super special and they're wonderful and they've got everything right, and like the rest of the universe should just listen to humanity. The Klingons should listen to humanity. The Romulans should listen to humanity. The Cardassians should be more like humanity. And what I like about Deep Space Nine is that it's like, actually humanity kind of have their own skeletons in the closet, and maybe there are different ways of looking at the universe that maybe make sense from a different perspective, and maybe everybody has a different point of view, and the joy of multiculturalism is coming together. Like, one of the things I love about Deep Space Nine is it has this sort of humanism at the heart of it, where it doesn't automatically believe the Federation is always right. And in fact, actually, there's a solid argument. It's slight spoiler for the show, Jack. Very telling that, like, the show doesn't really get to Cisco does a colonialism on Bajor. The show very quickly drops the, like, Cisco's like job on Bajor is like, we want you to shepherd this small developing nation into Starfleet, into the Federation. And over the course of the show, it becomes very clear that that's not in anybody's best interest. Nobody wants that. And so it kind of ends up falling by the wayside, very deliberately so. But instead you have, and again, this is the thing where we talk about it having a tension with like Star Trek, but also sharing Star Trek's humanity, where Deep Space Nine doesn't believe that like the Federation is inherently like the best. Because over the course of the show, the Federation does some terrible things, because the Federation is a government like any other. It's like any other organization that has to do the things the Federation does is going to make morally questionable choices. It is impossible to create a utopia. There's the line from the Maquis, which I think you've seen in the second season, which is, it's easy to be a saint in paradise, but the Maquis don't live in paradise. But what Deep Space Nine does have, which is this incredible humanism, is the belief that if you bring people together and you share each other's culture and you create a space where everybody can have access to a free market of ideas and everybody can have an exchange of culture in an open and fair way that doesn't like predispose one or the other, over time people will gravitate towards norms and values that are fundamentally humanist. Where, like, one of the great arcs of the show, you mentioned Quark being like one of your favorite characters, and it's true of Garrick as well, and it's arguably true of Worf, is that like Quark over the course of the show quietly develops a conscience. Like Quark, through like hanging out with the Federation and hanging out with good people,
Mhm.
quietly becomes like a decent person, one of the most decent people on the station. Garrick, over the course of the show, goes from being a guy who, by his own admission, has done terrible things in the past. And like the thing about like The Wire is that like Garrick, that is Garrick torturing himself. That is Garrick like feeling guilty and shameful about the things that he's done, which is not what Garrick would have felt 2 years ago. It's not what Garrick
Mm.
would have felt 3 years ago. But because Garrick spends enough time with Bashir, Bashir's morality kind of rubs off on him a little bit, and he kind of becomes more decent, and he kind
Mhm.
of becomes more kind. He kind of becomes more empathetic. And like Quark, like again, slight spoilers for the show is that like you mentioned the Ferengi episodes. The arc of the Ferengi episodes isn't the Ferengi join the Federation. They do that on Lower Decks, and I really didn't like it. The arc over the course of the show is actually Quark hangs out with a bunch of different cultures and races on Deep Space Nine over an extended period of time. His brother has a range of like different experiences. He marries a Bajoran woman. He becomes an engineer. He gives up being like a waiter at the bar. His son goes off and he joins Starfleet and he embraces that culture as well. And as a result of that, Ferengi culture gradually liberalizes. Ferengi culture over the course of the 7 years of Deep Space Nine, through simple exposure to things like the concept of equality, the concept of like fairness, the concept of social security and mutual reliance and cooperation, Ferengi culture opens up. And it doesn't open up in a way where they're like, you know what, we now reject capitalism completely and we realize that a socialist one world government is the right way, like the Federation. But instead, it just becomes we recognize that individuals have decent rights and that like maybe women should be allowed to wear clothes and do business deals and stuff like that. And like that is for me like the humanism of Deep Space Nine is the belief that like if you have, and again, it's a product of the 90s. I don't know how much of people would believe that these days. I love that Deep Space Nine was cynical in the 90s and is like incredibly optimistic by modern
Is
standards.
idealist now. Yes.
Yeah, but it's like if you create a space where people can come together and talk and share and
Mhm.
like communicate with one another over time, the best ideas will iterate forward and like people will become better as a result. Like,
Yeah.
and through exposure to other cultures, you don't have to assimilate those cultures, you don't have to assimilate into those cultures, but simply through exposure to them, you will your perspective will widen, and you'll become more humanist, you'll become better, you'll become a better person just by being around other people, which I think is
Well,
incredibly heartwarming.
agreed. Agreed. JP Lighthouse, thanks for the super chat. No comment on that super chat. Let's see here. That Espionza guy, member of the tip jar for 9 months. Appreciate that. Also, that Espionza guy, a little birthday cake emoji with a little super chat. Appreciate that. Multi Gnivi says currently watching DS9 for the first time, and I find it really difficult to take Cisco seriously when he's trying to be a threatening pirate. Wait a minute.
Is this the third season episode where like Cisco goes into the mirror universe and like mirror Cisco's dead and like real Cisco has to pretend to be space pirate Cisco?
Maybe that's
Um,
it.
yeah, and again you get into that like dicey way that Deep Space Nine treats women, where it's like, well, I guess I have to sleep with Dax in order to preserve this cover, and it's like, do you really have to do that? Is that really something you have to do? But like yeah, Cisco. Like again. I kind of like the hamminess of Cisco. I like the theatricality
Mm,
of Brooks. I think like it's very stagey, and I know that it is like Brooks's performance is Marmite. Like it is not a naturalistic
mm.
performance in any
Yeah, yeah.
meaningful way. But like Star Trek rarely was. I'm a guy who loves Shatner. I love Shatner's performance so much.
No, and I think like because he is so big, like he is a character who like we can discuss acting choices, but he is a person. Cisco is a person who I believe is a commander. Like, I will listen to him. Oh yeah, what will you say? Like,
No, but yeah,
he
it's just
has.
like Picard is like a dad to his crew. Like Picard is like, that like he is to Data. He's basically a surrogate father. That's the thing about
Yeah,
Picard. For as much as Picard doesn't have children, as much as Picard hates children, he is a dad to Data. His entire
yeah,
arc to Data is like, I'm Papa Picard. But yeah,
absolutely.
Cisco is not Papa Bashir. Like it's.
Let's see here. Udask says Battlestar Galactica. It's a free game for this pod.
Ooh.
I don't understand that. Snake
Okay.
in the Garden says Lower Decks includes Jack Quaid, friend of the show. That's true.
It does. And
That's true.
I do quite like Lower Decks. And I do want to shout out, like we mentioned that idea, like of Picard, like solving or creating massive problems and fucking off at the end of the episode of being like, we never have to deal with that again. One of my favorite like jokes in Lower Decks is I think from the penultimate episode, of the third season, where like they go to the planet from the symbiosis, the drug addiction episode, where Picard like decides to make an entire planet go cold turkey. And
Yes.
like they arrive at like the planet there like a decade after. They have like all this artwork about like how terrible the 10 years of cold turkey were, but now they're all like fitness health freaks, which is again one of those great jokes about like going sober, where it's like I recover from drug addiction and now like sports are my new thing.
Now I run marathons. I just need to be addicted to something.
Yeah, and like it's a good joke in large part because it feels like a joke about the other like there's a health and fitness culture in the first season of The Next Generation as well, where they go to the jogging planet with the naked people, where like breaking a window is a death sentence. But it also, I love that it has the punchline of like the crew show up and they're like, okay, we're recruiting for the Federation. We want to ask, do you guys want to join the Federation? And like, you know what? We're good. It's like 10 years of cold turkey. Picard going, you know what? You guys sort that out yourself. Do you think we're okay without joining?
Absolutely. Deeb Scrub says Darren appreciation super chat. Could listen to him talk all day. Obviously,
Luckily
me as
you
well.
have.
Yeah.
When are your kids due to be collected? By the way,
I have maybe 9 more minutes.
Okay, let's go.
So and that's cutting it close. They're old enough; they can hang out. They have cell phones. I can call them. Let's see here. What's up? 84 says I'm late to the podcast. Have we discussed Voyager's dinosaurs in space episode yet? We don't have time.
Marty's going to Japan next year again, right? We'll figure it out.
Yeah,
really great episode, Distant Origin, and it's another one of those, like the episode of Deep Space Nine we mentioned. It's about creationism. It's very obviously about like 90s issues and social issues, which is the idea of like teaching dinosaurs. I love how subtle the metaphor is, where it's like it's about how you can't teach that like dinosaurs existed, and it's like, well, who are our aliens in this story? Dinosaurs.
Dinosaurs. You see, they're dinosaurs.
I know writers who use subtext and they're all cowards.
I genuinely like we use that joke a lot, and but I honestly love it so much. It's like, you know what? Sometimes people are stupid, and you just got to hit them over the head with it. I love it,
and it's also fun. Like they're dino people.
Yeah. Let's see here. Says Patreon video where Darren puts movies into presidential era's tier list. I mean, yes, obviously, I love that idea.
What is the most Jimmy Carter movie? Is a question I don't know if I can answer. Like
Darren, that's Darren's white whale. What's the most?
Nixon movies are easy. Reagan movies are easy. Ford movies, I could probably figure something out, but it's like Carter. Where does Carter fit?
What an enigma. Matt Nard says Farscape is what I wished Voyager had been more like.
Also puppets. I've never watched Farscape, but they have puppets, don't they?
They do have puppets.
They have like Jim Henson. It's a Jim Henson thing.
Yeah. They got lots of puppets. I've also never watched Farscape. Sorry. Pure Pyro. Pure Pyro doing my work for me because I legitimately did not have one ready. To be fair, Pure Pyro has a to be rec, which is the phenomenal movie Logan's Run.
Very good.
Logan's Run is a phenomenal movie, and everyone should watch it. Also Farscape is on Tubi.
And Looney Tunes. And Looney Tunes are doing great on Tubi as well, actually, apparently.
Oh, great. So that's a great To Be Fair recommendation. Thank you, Pure Pyro. Let's see. Rally Mick Fandango says, here's for all the Trek talk. We appreciate that support. Sussy Guru 2000. My issue with Orville was that it was considerably worse than any of the Trek it aped, and McFarlane's style of humor just doesn't work for me. I think that's fair.
I would not disagree with that. Yeah.
Right? Like
But that's
McFar.
my Strange New Worlds thing is like I've seen this
Hmm.
done better before. Sorry.
Yeah. Oh no, I was just gonna say, like, McFarlane in general is an acquired taste. I think he's very clever, and I think a lot of his jokes are more clever than funny, and he thinks he's funnier than he is.
I think this is maybe the first time in history the argument's been made that McFarlane's too clever for his own good.
There's a lot of his jokes where you go, oh yeah, I get it.
I get the reference. That's
Yeah.
that's a nice niche reference in 1970s pop culture.
Yeah, that's a very interesting setup and payoff.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I will say, the thing about McFarlane is he has the most unlikely fans, which I love about him, is that like one of my former partners, who is like a classical violinist, loves McFarlane so much, which I love. Yeah.
the dichotomy of it all, I love it. All right, where were we? We were at Mr. Prati. Says my opinions. Oh, any opinions on Babylon 5? Neither of us had watched.
No,
sorry. I have heard from friends who I also talk Star Trek with. I have heard that Babylon 5 is great. Still, I'm not convinced to watch.
Time. It's the fire in which we burn. Yeah.
Time, y'all. Says part of the money for the Uber that Jack's kids need now. They'll be fine. They are teenagers. They can handle them. If I'm 5 minutes late, they'll be fine.
You'll pull up and they'll be going, Alan Moraine, count to 4, Alan Moraine.
That is the nichest of references. Eric, don't. Eric is putting. For those of you just listening right now, Eric is putting up still images of lonely children with backpacks waiting to be picked up from school.
I like that, in the absence of Marty, Eric has stepped into team dad role.
No, and I don't know if Nick is streaming later. We're probably pushing that back. Sure. Guess what? Y'all wanted Star Trek talk. You got it.
So much.
This is like the end of Ang Lee's Hulk, where he says, "You want my rage? You can have it all." Thank you, Eric, for making the timer even bigger. Let's see here. Mop Man says, Darren, have you read Garrick's novel written by his actor? I've heard it's an interesting view of the character and living through fascism.
Yes, A Stitch in Time, which is absolutely incredible. I'm aware that your kids desperately need to be picked up from school. It began as Andrew J. Robinson wrote a bunch of notes about Garrick as a character as he was playing him, and he eventually developed it into a book. There are a couple of books. It's really interesting about Deep Space Nine is that it's a lot of books written by actors from the show, where I think that J.G. Hertzler wrote The Left Hand of Destiny, which is about Martok, the character that he played. Armin Shimmerman wrote The 34th Rule, which is about the Quark, the character that he played as well. And there's a whole bunch of that where you have the sense of the actors living in the roles and having this sense of a life outside the show. Stitch in Time is incredible. It's maybe the best Star Trek novel ever written. It's up there with John Ford's The Final Reflection or Peter Davidson's Zadie or whatever. Would wholeheartedly recommend it. What I would also specifically recommend is that Andrew J. Robinson recorded an audio book of it about a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago. It is incredible. Now, obviously, he is older and he is not wearing the prosthetics, so he doesn't sound exactly like Garrick. But also, yes, Eric, I'm aware. But he is, but he reads it in character as Garrick, and it's incredible. It's like Garrick's autobiography. I would recommend that. Also recommend The Never-Ending Sacrifice by Uma McCormick, and I'm out. I'm done.
Lars Wee Shirt has been a member of the Green Grain for 23 months. What's the best way to rewatch DS9 today? I believe it's all on Paramount Plus. But that
Netflix
requires
as well.
That requires a monthly subscription. I found the entire series in the good DVD format for $50 on eBay. It's a bit of a pain in the ass switching all those discs, and they're numbered weird. They start in the 400s, which I don't quite understand. But that's what
it's the the fourth Star Trek show because it's like the original
Gotcha.
Star Trek, the animated. Yeah,
It's very and like the first episode is numbered like 700 something, and then they all start at the
that's the
400. So
point
it's
of it.
a
Yeah.
little, but plenty of ways to do it. Or if you just want to watch it digitally, Paramount Plus. Night Breeze just got to throw some more money, so you'll never end. Gelden Yedich, fastest 2 hours 40 ever. Thanks, gentlemen. That was great. Everybody, thank you so much. Obviously, like at the end of the day, this is Star Trek is a phenomenal series that means so much to so many people, and I'm just happy that we get an opportunity to share our love for something. And I'm really excited to watch more. Darren, thank you so much for joining this
My apologies
episode.
to your children, by the way.
They'll be fine. This episode of The Rewind, which is an episode number I do not know because I don't keep track of that like Marty does. In any case, for Darren, for myself, and for Eric, our producer, thank you all for watching. Goodbye.